across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This.
And yes, good afternoon. Welcome back. It is the home of common sense. You're very welcome. Thank you to Julia. Nice to have Julia back. She's here again, of course, tomorrow morning at 10. So Keir Starmer has been accused with an obsession with censorship after police were tasked with monitoring social media to control riots, while campaigners warn that the Online Safety Act is harming free speech by blocking videos of asylum seeker protests. We'll have more on that. Does this bill harm free speech? Some would say it obliterates free speech. This comes, of course, as Prime Minister Keir Starmer is meeting US President Donald Trump at his golf course in Scotland. They will discuss the conflict in Gaza, and maybe he'll get a few lectures about immigration. And meanwhile, the Lionesses will be welcomed home with a reception at Downing Street later after retaining their Women's Euro title. What a cracking end to a match that was yesterday, beating Spain, of course, on penalties, or pens, as we say in the trade. We'll have more on that later as well. Everything you need to know. We've got all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Here's the thing. I think the Online Safety Bill, which is probably a bill, I don't think that phrase crosses the lips of many people, but this has been in the making for a long while now. You'd have to go back to the previous government under Rishi Sunak and Michelle Donnellan. Wasn't she one of our voice of dooms recently? I think she was. Michelle Donnellan, of course, was the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, for it was the Tories that concocted this, frankly, half-baked idea of looking after the safety of the vulnerable and children. That was the theory behind it, we were told. Now, if you've been checking social media over the weekend, you might have been hoping to catch some of the latest on what's going on. Your usual diet of moody arrests, things kicking off outside migrant hotels. Maybe it was another issue altogether, the odd scrap, protests here and there. Your usual constant feed of shoplifters, phone theft, an array of videos masquerading of news. But actually, someone just made it up. Such is the nature of social media. It's the den of iniquity that is Twitter or X, mainly, it seems. This applies to all social media, but that's the one where I think it's a bit of a go-to place for those hoping to comment on news. In many respects, it's kind of the last place you want to be. If you want unsourced, unchecked, unverified, out-of-context videos, comment, then that's the place to go. Unless you want to do your due diligence and triple-check your facts and figures, then you're likely to come unstuck. You'll have a slightly warped view. However, like a stopped clock, you know, sometimes it's right and sometimes it's the only place that has a certain story that you might want to follow. Well, the Online Safety Act, which came into effect in this respect at the end of last week, is having what I think you'd describe as a catastrophic effect on free speech after people were blocked from viewing videos of some of the things I just mentioned, particularly the sort of protests outside hotels and the like. So if you went to look, you would have got a warning message explaining that due to local laws, you can't see this video. Now, we'll get some clarity on this a little later. Some of it might have been connected to age verification, in the same way that stop it. And this was always the problem with the bill. You know, we want to stop kids, 14-year-old boys looking at hardcore porn. That was sort of always flagged as the reason behind it. And when you put it like that, you go, well, there's nothing wrong. Yeah, it's a good idea. If you can stop kids having a diet of that at such a young age, that's great. However, it was always going to be the case that what got hoovered up in this sort of generalised safety issue and online harms and things that can happen, what got hoovered up in that was kind of everything. They talked a lot about fake news. There was a lot of debate around this during COVID, of course. You know, many people were not happy with the story. I don't think anybody looking back at it was happy at the story, but, you know, some people had slightly more ambitious theories about what was happening with COVID. And do you know what? True or not true, the fact that a government would ban you from seeing it which is kind of what North Korea literally do. It's what China literally does. If you stop off at, I don't know, Singapore airport, try having a look at social media when you touch down there in that moment when you head off to the next Australia or whatever. You'll come unstuck. And that's what this essentially has done. So users to Twitter, or X, said they're unable to view clips of police detaining activists in the UK with messages on the screen saying due to local laws, etc. X even barred users from watching a powerful speech about grooming gangs by the Conservative MP Katie Lamb that was made to Parliament earlier this year. So, I mean, there's the example right there. Even if you said there's an age component to some of this, which I don't think it's just an age component, and do explain if you've had this experience at the weekend where you were unable to see what you wanted to see, because the government had decreed you can't see it. I mean, there's no other way to dress this one up. The government had decided you can't see it. You can't see a speech from a Conservative MP about grooming gangs. It's not allowed. Why? Because it's been somehow hoovered up with the same idea that you want to protect kids from watching wild and horrendous hardcore pornography. No, that's not. No. That's not about online harms. That's a curtailing of free speech, right? I mean, right there. No doubt about it. No other way to dress this one up. 0344 499 1000. Lots of critics on this, including the US Vice President J.D. Vance, said legislation introduced on this could be used to attack free speech. Well, it already is. Now, I don't know whether they're going to right the wrong so that they can somehow allow, the filters or the algorithms or whatever it is that's stopping you. The idea that you can't watch a protest outside a hotel because, the same law is there to stop kids watching horrendous videos on self-harm, suicide, dietary issues, and the aforementioned pornography. I mean, it's just a nonsense. 0344 499 1000. X has not commented, but its AI chatbot Grok suggests that there was one particular clip of the Leeds arrest was restricted under the Online Safety Act due to violent conduct. Right, now, if you've seen that clip, you'll know that it's it's a usual video of the police and protesters clashing and all that goes with it. I don't think you would define it as violent content in the conventional way. And just to compound this, by the way, Keir Starmer now stands accused. I mean, he stands accused because he's the Prime Minister. And in fairness to him, again, this came in under the Tories, or it was all designed under the Tories, after it emerged that an elite team of police officers will monitor social media in order to quell riots. Detectives are to be drawn from forces around the country as the government scrambles to crack down on potential violence by flagging up early signs of civil unrest online. Now, on that one, do we just have to roll over and go, well, do you know what? Social media is no longer a kind of side dish thing. It's prominent and it's dominant. It's everywhere. And once upon a time, it was a bit like the old chat rooms that people would seek out certain areas of interest. Now, it's delivering major news, or attempting to, and of course, major comment on the way. So the idea that it can be ignored as it's just a few geeks and a few keyboard warriors, shouting off, mouthing off. Are those days now gone? Is it reasonable that the old Bill go, actually, there's somebody here, it's an intelligence tool if you're the police and somebody is literally organising a riot. You're going to go, oh, look, Bob in Arbroath is going to be kicking off a little bit later. I think we should pay him a visit. Is that reasonable if you're the police? You're in charge of law and order? What are you meant to do? Go, oh, we'll just ignore that. So the fine lines around this are absolutely massive. But predominantly, we're just asking that question. Does the online safety bill harm free speech? 0344 499 1000. We've got some great voices coming on this throughout the course of the programme. And we're also chatting to the comedian and broadcaster Steve N. Allen, who's back with us. Afternoon to you, Steve.
Good afternoon. Nice to be here. Do I need to pixelate my own face? Or
I think we might pixelate for you. You've already pixelated your shirt, so we might do the rest of you.
Well, you don't want to see what's under it, trust me.
Not again. Well, let's start with this story then. Keir Starmer and the censorship police cracking down, as some people see it. It's going to see police monitoring social media to suppress riots, sparking outrage as the Online Safety Act seems to block all sorts of other free speech. I mentioned the video of Katie Lamb, the Conservative MP, talking about grooming gangs. Let's have a listen to Reform UK's head of Doge, Zia Youssef, speaking on this very issue this morning.
Look, Britain is descending rapidly into some kind of dystopia. This Online Safety Act, Orwellianly named, what it does absolutely nothing to protect children. What it does do is suppress freedom of speech in this country and really force social media companies to censor anti-government speech.
And it does seem to amount to that, Steve. Whether that was the intention or not, that's certainly been the manifestation this weekend.
Yeah, you'd hope that wasn't the original plan. Like, this is another classic example of you can make an argument for the core thing here, but the execution seems terrible. It seems to be Labour's MO at the moment, although, as you say, this came under the Tories, who, let's be honest, were very much in favour of silencing any opposing voices. These are people who, back in the day, were willing to prorogue a parliament to just get some stuff shoved through. So not surprising. Also, they were the ones in charge of getting rid of some of our right to protest. These are things that we should be fighting for. It's difficult to now, isn't it? Certainly can't talk about it online thanks to this. So look, as you said, if it was simply about stopping people underage getting access to the spicier parts of the human body, not actual spice, don't put any spices down there, it'll stink, but if it were that, of course. But what it's being used for, it seems, it's the chilling effect, isn't it? The dodginess. Because if you can't get access to a Tory giving a speech, was she nude? I've not actually seen that speech, but unless she was actually stood there, full as nature intended, you should be able to see it. These anti-migrant protests, I guess they were all fully dressed on that as well. In fact, most of them they get in trouble for wearing a Union Jack dress. Taking it off is what the pubs want them to do. Yeah. You get banned online. I don't trust any government, not just this, it's not a left-right thing. I don't trust any government with the ability to control information.
100%.
Because even if you like this government right now, if you are, not 100% Labour right up the wazoo, at some point that will change, and guess what? The people you don't like will be in control of that information again. Yeah,
and there's the trouble, isn't it? I mean, yes, it's very noble to stop kids watching bad stuff, and I mentioned it's not just about pornography, self-harm, and we've had all these debates around this, and the idea that you can access it bang like that, when prior to the digital world there was no such access to that kind of stuff. So I kind of get that as an intention, but what seems to have happened here is extraordinary. And I remember the arguments around COVID at the time. You'd have a doctor, there was always, some doctors somewhere, there wasn't many of them, who very much thought the whole COVID jab was not just a rotten idea, but it was almost designed to be a rotten idea. And if you've got the word doctor in front of your name, then of course your message becomes all the more powerful. Now, some of that stuff might have been garbage. To some people it was the truth. But should I be told I'm not allowed to watch it, though? I mean, there I am in a democracy, a well sort of fought democracy that we now enjoy. Should the government say you're not allowed to hear an alternative view?
Well, if I were in charge of things, and I think we all pray to God I never am, it seems to me simple. If it's something you can disagree with, have at it. Open discourse. So you could express an opinion. I could say, I've never heard such a load of rubbish before, as I often tweet you after the show. And then you can carry on that argument forever, can't you? But the one thing you can't do with porn is let someone see a pair of whatever they're looking at and go, no, I give you the counterpoint to those bosoms. So that's not something you can disagree with.
Indeed.
There is no debate that removes that picture.
Yeah.
So it seems easy. Ban that stuff. Don't ban the other stuff. Let open debate happen. Yeah, you're right. It was fine almost before COVID, wasn't it, where we kind of knew what was the good and bad stuff on the internet, but then something changed. The idea that this is information that if you have, it will be dangerous to you, so I will stop you seeing it. They're all nice words said in a nice way, but the effect of it is controlling and chilling. And it's not that the Labour government are saying you're not allowed to say this. It's that the tech companies they don't know where the line is. These laws don't specify the line enough. Yeah. So people daren't go near it. And that's the chilling effect.
I've never got my head around this. Even before all of this, 10 years ago, I couldn't get my head around the idea that Facebook and Twitter and those kind of organisations that have the most incredible technology. If you think just even in its most basic form, what is being required of the tech world to make all that stuff happen in real time with no delays or lags, and opinion and argument, stick a video on there. You know, you've got 10,000 deserts worth of servers with hose pipes on them 24/7 to keep this stuff chugging away. But they couldn't get rid of a mad racist. And I always found that very odd, that the algorithms that can do so much were incapable of spotting pornography, beheadings, you know, the kind of stuff, frankly, you don't want anybody seeing, but you don't want kids seeing, and yet they can't. And now we're in the AI world, and anyone who's just tested any of the various AI programs that are out there, and there's, you know, lots of them, will see how just mind-blowing, jaw-dropping these things are. And this is in its infancy. And yet they still can't find a way to go, well, let's just get rid of the bad stuff. We'll put an algorithm in that will say, yeah, you can watch the protest outside the hotel. You can even have Dr. Death, the man that thinks that, you know, every kind of vaccine from the measles to COVID has been designed specifically to kill the human race. You know, we'll allow, you know, that stuff because it's in free debate. But the demonstrably awful stuff, you just won't get it, won't even be on there. I mean, how hard could that be?
I don't think it's actually that hard. I think you're right, but that's almost not the mission that tech companies have right now. They need to err on the side of safety so much, because they're not the ones in charge of working out whether they've transgressed. Someone else with biases and opinions works out whether they're going to get an 18 grand fine for each transgression. So they don't think, well, let's just ride where we think the line is, pay some of the fines, don't pay some of the fines. Why would they? Why would they do it properly when they can go, no, any of this lot, you're not allowed to see any of this now because we won't get fined? Because the tech companies won't get fined for not showing you the details of the protest. So, of course, they're going to go, well, we'll shut down all the stuff. And then at some point we'll review it, and then you get to see it maybe. And it just, at some point, we as a nation will know less than everyone else, because we will get the Fisher-Price version of the internet. That's what we're fixing.
And we already had the thing with Apple, didn't they, when they cut off their, you know, the encryption element of their security settings. They didn't even challenge it, rolled over and went, yep, we'll do that. And as you rightly say, that was easier. That's the path of least resistance, was to just do it. Listen, we're going to talk some more in a moment, Steve. Steve and Alan is with us. Loads to come. Trump's wind farm con job comments. We'll look at that. Calls for an extra bank holiday because of a football match. Not sure about that, although an extra bank holiday is always welcome. The ad for Sharia courts. Oh, my goodness. And more on the way. 0344 499 1000.
10K cash for Coldplay.
Play 10K cash for Coldplay with 10 grand in your hand tax-free plus 6 super hot tickets to witness Coldplay's sold-out Music of the Spheres tour from a VIP box at Wembley Stadium on August 22nd.
Tickets, top tunes and 10 grand cash.
Don't panic. Enter to play 10K for Coldplay at talksport.com/win and get ready for the feel-good gig of the summer. 10K for Coldplay is a joint TalkSport Limited competition run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio. See talksport.com for terms and conditions.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Margaret says, what kind of country are we living in? J.D. Vance was right. He could see what is happening to this country. He was told to keep his opinions to himself, but we need someone with a strong voice who's on our side. And Keir Starmer keeps saying, oh, we've got free speech. We've always had free speech. So you can't just wheel that out and make it fact by saying it. Because clearly there is a big question mark over it. If people are going to social media and literally a box is popping up on their screens saying, due to local laws, you can't see this, then we don't have full and frank and open free speech. Steve N. Allen is with us, the comedian and broadcaster, looking at the big stories of the day. Let's take a peek into the mind of Donald Trump here, Steve. Blasting Europe's illegal migration crisis upon arriving in Britain, calling it a horrible invasion and warning the continent could be lost if leaders fail to act. Let's have a listen to what the US president had to say.
I will say this, you know, they did ask me when I got off the plane, immigration, Europe has a tremendous problem, and we do too, but we've sealed our borders. We have nobody coming in, and we have hundreds of thousands of people being taken out, and the bad ones first, and I think we're doing a very good job of that. But we had, I mean, it literally registered 0 people last month. You probably saw that, nobody. And Europe has a very similar problem. I think they're going to end up in the same place. You might as well go there quicker.
What I do love about Trump, Steve, is that he's not saying this stuff like in a little room in the White House. He says this in front of the person that and he doesn't care about that. And that there's not many people that can do that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's awkward. You do expect some sort of aide to go, they're sitting right there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, she's next to you.
But that's what we need, actually, a level of honesty. Look, I'm not a 100%. Trump guy, and yeah, it's not as if, you know, I'm not... there's 2 types of Trump derangement syndrome, isn't there? The people who think everything he's ever done is the worst thing in the world, and people who would follow him to the death, like, no, kefefe is a word. Yes. Don't be stupid, right? Clearly, reality is somewhere in the middle, which means even if you're not a Trump person, you have to be willing to listen to things and go, yeah, of course, you know what? There are some problems with the way that they're sorting out the migration issues in America, but it should be easier for us to do it. How are they doing it better than us when we have water? If ever there should be an easier barrier to protect, it's an English Channel, isn't it? They have a land border, the width ways, the fat way, between them and some other countries. That's a difficult bit, isn't it? But
I mean, if this was a scene in the thick of it, you know, you'd have somebody with a flip chart going, no, but there's water.
Yeah.
It's literally water. Look, literally
they've
around
got
your
boat
whole
technology.
country. Yeah.
They've got floating technology.
There'd be a whole line written about... You've got water around your whole country. And I mean, and Trump, you know, he certainly seems to have partially solved the problem in America. Hardly anybody wants to cross their borders now because they think they're going to get locked up, 40,000 people in jail.
Yeah, and it's potentially just a temporary thing at the moment because the courts need to look at it, but it doesn't matter. It shows that it is possible to reduce the numbers and stop the numbers. Yeah, you can have your court argument later, but it shows that taking action will make a difference. And because of Trump derangement syndrome, I like to remind people that a lot of what he says and a lot of the points he makes are Macron's points. So it's not about hating the person. Don't do an ad hominem thing. Listen to the points. Macron came over here and went, oh, it's a bit of a sweet deal, isn't it? Sweet touch. Look at all the pull factors, all of the benefits to
100%
to coming here. Well, sure, loads of people who love Macron should be willing to listen to him then. In fact, that's probably true of Keir Starmer. I'm sure he loves Macron. Please listen to those bits that he said.
Let's move to this story. The Lionesses return home, of course, to England after they won the Euro title with a dramatic win over Spain. Winning penalty goal scorer Chloe Kelly had this to say following that magnificent win last night.
And the fans, they've been incredible the whole tournament, and I'm so proud to be English.
There it is. It's a very brief clip, but she was so proud to be English, and it was a moment. And whether anybody's into football or not into football, I mean, there was something rather, just delightful, and I just thought it was incredible. The penalty shootout at the end was proper drama, right?
Yeah, but I mean, she said she's proud to be English. So I'm just being told she's been cancelled. Oh, never going to work again. You can't say stuff like that these days. She's not allowed on the internet. Look, the problem is I'm not into football. And I never have been. And normally that just means I don't blend in with blokes, and that's fine. During the Qatar World Cup thing, I was a conscientious objector. People were giving me credit for it. But now women's football, apparently I'm a misogynist. It's very difficult to know which side of the fence I'm on this. I'm happy that football's come home. I guess it came home during the well-lit routes and then had to call someone to say that it got home. What would it be in women's football? Great. It is. It's a thing to celebrate, a moment that the nation enjoyed. I mean, the idea of wanting a bank holiday for it, look, we all want a day off. It's just laziness, isn't it? We want a bank holiday without a royal having to die, because then you can't really enjoy it. You've got to be all somber. But maybe just get back to work. It's just a sports thing. If you do it for football, you've got to do it for men's football, if they ever win anything, so we don't need to worry about that. You've got to do it for all the other sports. Rugby people would be all upset about it as well. I don't know, man. It just feels like this is a slippery slope to not helping our economy at all.
It's very strange. And I remember, you've just reminded me of my neighbour who had a massive row at his own barbecue with a mum. This was during the Women's World Cup. And he said, oh, you're watching the football tonight? And he said, no, I'm really not into it. Really not into it at all. And she went for him. It was absolute booster rocket territory. And he kept going, no, it's exactly your problem. You're not into blah, blah, blah. And off she went. And he went, no, I'm not into football. Generally. Yeah. And she went, oh, right, OK. But it was the idea that was the default response to somebody saying they weren't into it.
I know. I don't realise I've got the look. I've got the barely any hair, which is often synonymous with those of a right-wing type. So I've been attacked for... Yeah, I've got that look, haven't I? Can I just say that, just to live up to that stereotype, not to go too men's rights activist on this, but... the women's team have already got a train line named after them, which is more than the men's team have ever had. True. So maybe we should rename HS2 to something to do with the men's team, because it's pointless and way more expensive. So I think in some ways it would be the appropriate analogy.
There you go. Now we're onto something here. Let's put it to, I don't know, TFL or something. Sadiq Khan will probably follow that one up. Let's move to this story then. Anger as a role at a Sharia court is advertised on a site for government jobs. MPs demanding urgent action over this job in a Sharia court. Rupert Lowe has blasted them for promoting a parallel legal system. And I actually haven't got the name of the job specifically, but it's a role that requires Sharia law qualifications, and Manchester Sharia Council requires Sharia law qualifications. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, I was not up on this story enough to not be shocked by it. I didn't realise these were like proper things you could be employed in and put adverts on government websites. Now, people are upset by this, but in the low down in the story, they say, well, this is not run by the government and they're just advertising jobs. Even that is shocking. Is this a thing you can do now? Just set up your own parallel legal system? Can I do that? It feels like I should be allowed to just then set up Steve's rules. The next thing you know, as long as I've got the money to employ people in my own personal courts, I could be sending people to Steve jail.
I mean, it's just banana. The job title is actually Sharia law administrator. Now, of course, if you're an administrator and it's a government job, I have to reasonably assume there are lots of other government jobs around this. Who are you administrating for? There's doubtless going to be a department there that's dealing with this. How the hell has this come under the remit of the taxpayer?
And it also feels like it's not like our main hardcore legal system is full of people doing way too much work, and we don't have enough people to run the prisons. The legal system doesn't have enough people in it, and yet we're recruiting for this serial one on the side. I honestly,
It's
this is
it's
blown
like
my mind.
advertising for a biblical litter picker. I mean, it was just ridiculous, right? Makes no
That's why, yeah,
sense.
a shepherd, but one of those religious ones.
That's what you need. Yeah, only shepherds need apply. This last one does actually tie into something I just referenced, only because of the clip we're going to play. Geordies have officially become Britain's sweariest country or region, cursing 14 times per 100 words, beating Glaswegians, who held the top spot for 4 years. But how can they knock the top spot off the famous Malcolm Tucker? Let's have a reminder. That's just beautiful, beautiful. Where are you on
poll as well?
Yeah, where are you on swearing, Steve?
Well,
it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I do enjoy it, and oh yeah, it's fun, isn't it? And not the simple, just like, oh, I know this swear word, I'll say it. A lot of times, it's people having buffer words while they're thinking, instead of like posh people going we working class types throw in a swear word. It keeps it fresh, but it gives you time to think. I very much enjoy the more creative stuff, like in that clip, where you can really go to town. You've got the building blocks, you've got the stickle brick of swears, and you put it together into a beautiful erection. But I think we need to stop worrying about it, stop frowning about it too much. Science shows you that if you swear, you don't feel as much pain. There are things to do with mental health that if you swear, you can feel better about life. It's a free gift. Stop looking down on it and tutting. It's cheaper than paracetamol, off-brand paracetamol. It's good for us. So I think we should all have a daily swear. Some sort of, instead of doing Tai Chi in the park like they do over in the Far East, we should all pop down the park in the morning and have a good old early morning swear.
Yeah, I like it. Simple as that. Steve, thank you as ever. Steve N. Allen, the comedian and the broadcaster. You want to pick the bones out of any of that? 0344 499 1000, particularly that question we asked at the beginning, the online safety bill, which is going to that's going to become more and more of a point of discussion, the online safety bill. Now you've heard of it and are loosely aware of some of what it entails. Will it be harming free speech? I think we know the answer to that based on what we've seen this weekend. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's talk just gone 25 to 2. So let's continue on this story. Interesting times, of course. Keir Starmer facing criticism over the new police unit monitoring social media for signs of unrest. The Home Office is recruiting officers nationwide to prevent riots after protest outside migrant hotels, including, of course, famously over the last week or so in Epping. Campaigners warn the Online Safety Act is blocking protest videos and speeches, with Reform UK's Zia Youssef calling it the biggest assault on free speech in UK history. Let's get a word on this. Benjamin Jones, Director of Case Management of the Free Speech Union. Benjamin, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I mean, this is interesting, this, isn't it? We've been debating this for years now because, of course, the Tories sort of conjured this thing up and everybody, people like you, people like me and most sane people said, right, yeah, we get the idea that you might want to stop a 12-year-old watching hardcore porn. We're kind of on side with that. However, you might just hoover up a thing called free speech in the process. As it turns out, 3 days in, that's exactly what's happened.
I think it has been worse than I expected it to be, and I expected it to be quite bad. I mean, since Friday evening, we've seen posts censored on X because of the Online Safety Act. For example, about an arrest that was made at a protest in Leeds, a post about Richard the Lionheart and the Crusades, a post calling for the protection of single-sex spaces. All of these things have been taken down. A post from the Conservative MP Katie Lamb about grooming gangs that she made some months ago relating to a speech that she gave. All of these things have been taken down. And so when you look at the rationale given by the proponents of this legislation in various forms over the last 4 or 5 years or so about protecting children and so on, and of course, that's a very difficult thing to argue against. People do, of course, think that children should be safe online, but the threshold has been set so low and the incentives of platforms are entirely towards censorship, towards taking posts down, towards erring on the side of taking posts down.
In terms of a workaround, I mean, is it right that you can put your ID in and that would circumnavigate it, or with some of these videos, is it still a no-no?
Well, my workaround on Friday evening was to rely on a relative of mine who's living in America to tell me what was going on in England, in a city 200 miles away from where I live, relying on somebody on the other side of the world to tell me what was going on in the news in Britain. Now, people had suggested you can use VPNs, of course, you can change your location on X, but I rather think that misses the point. I think the point is that the government is trying to censor. It has set the bar for censorship incredibly low. Now, of course, people can work around these systems if you're tech savvy. Lots of people aren't tech savvy. Lots of people just want to go onto X and get the news and see what's happening. And they are already being prevented from doing that.
And can you put ID in to get through this? I mean, obviously, if you're trying to look at a legitimate adult site, one of the other elements of this bill would mean that you've got to prove your age. But this is different, isn't it? This is not about age verification. This is about the fact you're in the UK and you can't see it.
That's right. It varies. Let's just talk about X, particularly for an example. It varies depending on what type of account you have, how long you've been on X for. X is using an algorithm to work out what your age is. So if you've been on the platform for 18 years, it will assume that you are at least 18 years old and you should be able to see this content. But the trouble is, if you're a bog standard ordinary user of X, it is assuming that you are not 18, that your age isn't verified. And so the default position for free speech online under the Online Safety Act will be that everybody has to use the child settings.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be fascinating, isn't it? I mean, if you start to sort of imagine this being rolled out over the coming weeks and months as the situation, I mean, it could become a farce, to be honest. In fact, in many ways, we sort of hope it does, where even the government can go, this is clearly unworkable.
Well, I think it's worth bearing in mind that this is just the starting point. This is day 4 of the enforcement of these provisions of the Act. The Secretary of State responsible has quite broad power to reshape the guidance, to direct Ofcom, to expand and change how it regulates social media platforms. So if Labour MPs start demanding more censorship, less latitude for freedom of speech online, the Secretary of State can deliver that, lay that before Parliament. And I suggest it's very unlikely that this Parliament is going to defend freedom of speech.
Yeah, it does. Well, this Parliament is also presiding over a new unit that's going to be monitoring social media for signs of unrest. So juxtaposing the previous story with this one as well, I mean, it's a pylon of an anti-free speech narrative going on here.
Yeah, it's an absolute onslaught. We've had the battle over the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act as well over the last year. And the biggest other item on our radar at the Free Speech Union is, of course, the government's attempt to try and define Islamophobia. There really is a perfect storm for freedom of speech in Britain that this government is brewing.
Indeed. Listen, Ben, great to have you on, sir. Thank you. Benjamin Jones, Director of Case Management at the Free Speech Union. On that issue of child safeguarding, let's get a word from John Taylor, former detective and child safeguarding consultant. John, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. I mean, it was all very simple, really, wasn't it? This was about protecting kids, ultimately.
Certainly agree. And, you know, as a caveat to everything, you know, if anything that anybody does to try and safeguard, protect children offline, online, we welcome. It's that simple. But when you look at what was the Online Safety Bill and our Online Safety Act, it's just not going to work. It can't work. And as you've just been talking to Benjamin there, regarding the freedom of speech, freedom of democracy, is going too far. And if we bring it back to its nuts and bolts about keeping children safe online, well, I don't know who's been advising over the years, but they've got it all wrong. They haven't really started to define behavior or actually what these children, what is deliberate. Can you deliberately access these sites, or does it happen by accident? What we'd like to do is think that children don't deliberately access these sites, but it might happen by accident. That's what we've got to prevent. Unfortunately, it does happen deliberately as well. You've got the whole issue at the moment. The IWF, the Internet Watch Foundation, found out that most sites being reported to them have a high percentage, up to 90% of self-generated images by some very young children. So this is the behaviour that's going on.
I mean, in terms of stopping the bad stuff, I mean, we all kind of get that. We all see stuff online and think, how the hell did that even get there? I still think that social media companies and their lack of algorithmic ability, a bit staggering, frankly, that with AI and goodness knows what else, can't this stuff just be weeded out? Although Steve, one of our previous contributors, did make the point that the onus is then on them to get it right, and if they get it wrong, they could get fined £18,000 for each indiscretion. So rather than that, they'll just come at it with we'll do what the government want, we'll block it, and therefore, we've covered our own backsides, as it were. But of course, it's not going to stop the industry in child exploitation online.
Not at all. I mean, when I talk, and the school terms will start again, and I'm away speaking to schools every week. You look at the three main ones of Snap, Meta, and of course TikTok. Well, obviously TikTok's based in China. You know that, and I know that. Now, if you look at their terms and conditions, they quite correctly say 13 and show the ages and what their terms and conditions are. So the onus is then put on the user. So they will actually turn around and say, we are doing our utmost to make sure this doesn't happen. We're making sure we look at posts and images, etc. And then you look at the fine, I know it's 10% or 18 million, this sort of thing. Well, you've just had OnlyFans valued at 5.4 billion. Even 18 million to these companies isn't a lot of money. We have to look at different ways to protect children. And I mean, you touched on it. I mean, just yesterday, I tried everything out, and you mentioned to Benjamin about VPNs. I was able to go onto those sites with a VPN, and nothing was asked of me. So we know that there's a way around this, and children do use it. So what I would suggest is legislation. We should look at the platforms and say, get rid of your recommended algorithms, get rid of monetarization to stop that lure, as it were, for children to go there, because it's just too inviting for them.
Indeed. Well, we're going to watch with interest. You do wonder, John, whether, governments will look at this, or are they looking at this as very much sort of a pilot and they'll think again? I don't know. Governments don't like, well, this government does quite like a U-turn, but I don't know whether they like being seen to do a U-turn.
Yeah, I agree, because again, you've got this again with the talk with Benjamin about the freedom of speech and this new unit that's been set up. I'm thinking some of perhaps my old colleagues are now doing this. And then you've got the whole issue about the footballer Jess, who had all that awful racism online. So what we've got to look at, abuse online is going to occur. It can be misogynistic, it can be racist, it can be homophobic. It continues and it continues, it continues. So perhaps they're concentrating on the wrong thing, and they should be talking more and more with the platforms.
Yeah, indeed. John, thank you, sir. Great to have you with us. John Taylor, former detective and child safeguarding consultant. That's an area that he knows well and doesn't sense that this is really worth the paper it is written on. People will circumnavigate it anyway who really want to, but that isn't really the point, is it? That you can find a way around it. And even if you are able to, should I have to put an age verification and a picture of my face in order to watch some news that someone's put online? Now, yes, there's certain content that could be disturbing to people. Every day, despite this being the case for years, I see stuff that's shocking. I can't believe that it's online. I can't believe anybody would share it. But people do quite like sharing the really bad stuff. Hey, have a look at this. Look what they're doing here. This, and whether the story is about Israel, whether it's about Ukraine, whether it's about drugs, whether it's about local crime, kids in school having fun, whatever it happens to be. There is just the most horrendous stuff that I really can't believe that you can just freely watch anytime you like. Extraordinary. How do you police it? Do you want to police it? Be careful what you wish for. In addition to all of that, Kevin in Coventry says, I'm a bit late in life to read this book, but I'm currently reading 1984 by George Orwell. The parallels in this book, written long ago, and the world we are living in today is frightening. We are being silenced, suppressed and brainwashed by this corrupt government. It's interesting. It's literally one of my favourite books, Kevin, and one of the most frightening books I think I've ever read. And along with Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, there's another one, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury is the other that's kind of in that sort of dystopian world of, wow, imagine a world like that. So yeah, there is stuff in there. You are forced to go there, because they always say, you know, if you have to mention Orwell, you've kind of lost the up. Well, no, you are forced there. We're made to go, that's quite weird, isn't it? When you look at people getting knocks on doors for stuff they put on social media. But what do the old bill do? I mean, now people will say, well, actually, the online world is no longer like a little niche hobby, a pastime of people who've got strong views. It's much bigger than that. And the police have to look at it as a potential, if you like, growth area of criminality when it comes to organising riots. I mean, imagine the police force, the group of police officers, they're going to get together to check out social media to see if, you know, some people are planning on kicking off summer riots, etc. Now, if you found Bob from Arbroath, who's determined to, he's saying, right, I'm organising a riot, come tooled up, bring hammers and God knows what else, because we're going to kick off at 6:30 on Acacia Avenue. If somebody's written that, you can loosely understand why the old Bill might want to knock on their door, go, mate, hang on, are you serious about this? But what about all the other stuff that isn't overt or even insightful in any way, but it is robust? And that's not illegal to be robust, and have big opinions is not illegal to be robust, and having massive opinions on immigration and integration, if that's the issue here, that's also not illegal. And those people are going to be swept up in this carnage of state observation of your words. Is it going to be the same thing there as well? 0344 499 1000. We'll have more from you in a couple of moments' time. Right now, 10 to 2, this is Talk.
10K cash for Coldplay.
Play 10K cash for Coldplay with 10 grand in your hand tax-free plus 6 super hot tickets to witness Coldplay's sold-out Music of the Spheres tour from a VIP box at Wembley Stadium on August 22nd.
Tickets, top tunes and 10 grand cash.
Don't panic. Enter to play 10K for Coldplay at talksport.com/win and get ready for the feel-good gig of the summer. 10K for Coldplay is a joint TalkSport Limited competition run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio. See talksport.com for terms and conditions.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is it. We mentioned swearing a little earlier. Dave in Dorset says, in the 52 years that my wife and I have been together, I've heard her swear only on 2 occasions. Do you know what? I'm so in awe of that. If you live with my other half, that's a very different statistic, I have to say. 2 occasions, that's brilliant. Love it. Let's go to the calls. Mark's in Lincolnshire. What have you got for us, Mark? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Yeah, firstly, whoever that guy was from the Free Speech Union, sack him. What on earth was he on about? I mean, this is the kind of moral panic stuff that really drives me crazy, Ian. Stuff's been taken down on X. No, it hasn't. Everything's exactly where it always was. You know, the only difference with X is you have to be verified, essentially. Yeah. You know, to prevent under 18s accessing content. Yeah. Now, as I said to your producer, researcher I spoke to earlier, you know, for example, just as an example from my own account, I only subscribe to like the premium basic. I have done for about a year now, purely because I just wanted to be able to do longer posts. Sure. So obviously this has come along. So as far as that's for me, it hasn't impacted my experience. No, and
the same for me, interestingly, for the very same reasons.
I mean, the Katie Lamb video that he referred to, that's still there. Yeah. I literally watched that this morning. As it had been mentioned, I thought, well, I'll have a look. And, you know, it's still there. But, you know, as the actual act itself, what it should be about is exactly as I believe it should be about, which, for example, about 2 weeks ago, because I'm quite outspoken. I'm Christian. I'm quite outspoken on that. I'm quite outspoken on immigration and my desire for mass deportations. But I'm not ashamed or embarrassed about anything that I post.
No, that's fair enough.
I don't fear the authorities. You know.
But should the state, Mark, make you go through a verification test to see an MP giving a speech?
That is where I draw a question with it. Because, as I said again to the chap I spoke to when I first rang up, as a great example, because as I say, I'm a Christian, I'm quite interested in what's going on in Syria with the Druze and the Christians. Yeah. And I saw a video about 2 weeks ago, I think it was, which is a video of essentially some ISIS Islamists, whoever they are, essentially marching 3 Christians to jump off a balcony. And the whole thing's on the video, yeah? I don't want somebody under the age of 18 to watch something like that.
No. It's horrifying.
It's difficult enough for me at 50 years old.
Yeah.
You know, to watch something like that. But I've at least got some, you know, life experience and some skill and ability to actually process and compartmentalise that and deal with it, if that makes sense. And to me, that kind of content, whilst I hate watching it and it does stay with me, I use it also.
Even you describing it just then, which you did very modestly, is disturbing. Just to think that is, and you know, similar things that I've seen on this, it is beyond horrific. Why people want to post it or share it, I've got no idea. But it's out there. How do we police that stuff then? And who decides where that line is drawn? And some might say, actually, as barbaric as it is, you need that out there to get people angry enough to do something about it.
That would be my argument, Ian.
Yeah.
As I say, I would use something like that. I wouldn't necessarily repost it myself, but I would use reference to that. I would use having watched that and what actually literally happens. You know, because it can be described to you, oh, this happens. But unless you actually see it, you can actually see the brutality of these people.
Yeah.
Now, that's not the kind of thing that I would want to see every single day, but I think it does need to exist. You know, otherwise we have a closeted view of what war is. We have a closeted view of what persecution is. Yeah. And you know what I mean by that? We can sit here and say, you know, anti-Semitism is dreadful, which it is. But, you know, you don't truly appreciate what anti-Semitism is unless you've either experienced it or you've witnessed it, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely, yeah, like all forms of discrimination, you know, the only real knowledge is experience, of course. Listen, I've got to move on that point, Mark, but thank you, great call. And you do chime into something there that I think is the sort of overarching question. Is should you be made to go through an age verification process in order to view some elements of uncomfortable news? Heather says it's a psychological war going on in our country of censoring people and controlling people, and it leads to civil unrest and violence. One here says, Ian, just a thought, Elon Musk owns X. Doesn't he champion free speech? So why is he censoring coverage of asylum hotels? Or is he just playing ball with the pathetic excuse of the government? Yeah, they're all playing ball, as Steve Allen said to us a little earlier, because they don't want to get fined. So they'll go, OK, we'll do what the government are asking. And you can see it, but you've just got to verify yourself and all that, the usual process. 0344 499 1000 is the online safety bill harming free speech. Lines are open. Let's get the news now, 2 o'clock.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
3 minutes after 2 o'clock. So, Keir Starmer being accused of an obsession with censorship after police have been tasked with monitoring social media to control potential riots. Campaigners also, separate to this but very much feeding into it, warn that the Online Safety Act is harming free speech by blocking videos of things like asylum seeker hotel protests. What's your take on this? What do you sense is happening? What's the direction of travel? and what is behind it. We'll have more on that. Also this afternoon, bad people, that's a quote, are coming on small boats. According to US President Donald Trump, he's warned ahead of those talks with Prime Minister Keir Starmer, saying the UK cannot continue to let people come in illegally. He's laying it on the line. We'll have more on that in a few moments. And tasers will be used in prisons for the first time to tackle rising violence from inmates, with assaults on staff up 15% last year. Many of you scratch your head and go, what, they don't even have access to a flipping taser up till now on very, very violent wings in some of our most notorious prisons? More on that as well. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Aki says the Online Safety Act is nothing to do with children's safety. It's all about censoring things they don't want us to see. The government disgusts me. The sooner they're gone, the better. Although, bear in mind, this whole online safety bill, as it was then, was concocted by the Conservatives. They stitched this together. It was Rishi Sunak's government, Michelle Donnellan, who was the Science and Tech Innovation Minister at the time. It rumbled along for a long, long time, all of these same concerns. A lot of media, understandably, said, well, what do you do then if you're a newspaper, for example, and you want to put a link up there to an interesting story that might be contentious? It might contain some content, doesn't have to be visual, but just some words or whatever that are disturbing, because sometimes news is disturbing. It's not meant to be a comfort blanket. And then, of course, you stick it onto social media for the world to see. Bingo, a big box comes up saying, sorry, you live in the wrong place to be allowed to see this information. Now, if that's the reason why a lot of the press and the media world were very much hesitant, or I think I'm reasonable to say unequivocally against it, for that very reason. You know, you can have your mad COVID anti-vax doctor, but I don't necessarily want him banned. And I think having the content to decide, having the right to decide, is pretty crucial to this kind of stuff. And that was always given as a bit of an example. Why do you want fake news on there? Well, I mean, what is fake news as distinct from a kind of different variant or a spin or an angle on a news story? You know, you can watch linear news on your TV, and I think we've all done it. It's not that I think what is laughably called legacy media, whatever the hell that means, I mean, what you often mean when somebody says, oh, I hate this channel or that channel, is that, yeah, they didn't ask the question you wanted answering. They didn't go as deep into that issue that you wanted, but you could ask the bloke next door and he might have a whole different version of what is deep. So the news is meant to be, if you like, a framework of the news, if the truth be told. Sometimes you'll get a deeper investigation, and then sometimes it'll warrant a special or a documentary. So it's not easy. I understand that it's not easy, but should we have the government deciding ultimately that in order to watch X, Y and Z, you need to be verified by the state? Let's speak with Alan Tolhurst, chief reporter at Politics Home, of course. Good afternoon to you, Alan.
Afternoon, Ian.
A verified voice, if ever there was one, of course. I mean, it is tricky, and we all remember the debates in the last few years leading up to this. No one's saying it's easy. Obviously, we don't want kids to be watching suicide videos and videos that are going to teach them, you know, how to actually have an eating disorder rather than not have blah, 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 and hardcore pornography. No one wants 8-year-old kids watching that stuff. So that bit we all get, but it seems what some would say the law of unintended consequences, others, perhaps slightly conspiratorially, will say, no, this is the law of intended consequences. What do you make of it?
Well, I think partly it's due to the fact that just in general, governments and legislative bodies are pretty bad at kind of trying to put a framework around technology and the internet. You talk about how long this legislation was in a gestation period for. So much has happened in the period between it even coming forward and it coming around now. In fact, the law was passed last year, and they gave themselves an extra year in order to try and come up with a system for verification, because a lot of these criticisms that we're hearing now were put forward at the time the legislation was passed, and they still haven't got around to it. We've seen today, you know, VPNs VPNs, the way kind of masking where your internet address is from, the most downloaded apps today. So clearly people are just immediately circumventing these kind of rules. And further aspects of the Online Safety Act don't even come in until 2027. By that point, the landscape of kind of technology would be completely different again. It's a real kind of minefield. And you talk about whether it was intentional or not. I remember speaking to some peers because it got a lot of the bill was kind of ripped apart by the House of Lords before it was passed. And I spoke to some peers, and they were talking about how child safety was their number one priority. And even if there were these kind of further consequences in terms of chilling kind of wider content distribution, they really didn't seem to mind about that. They just seemed so kind of single-minded in terms of trying to prevent children from accessing kind of harmful information that it's not a surprise to me now that we have led to this point where all sorts of things are being kind of wrongly tagged as being harmful and people are having difficulties viewing material that you should be able to.
Do you think, is there a sense that, I know they've piloted this stuff over the last year or more, is it likely that the government will look at this, okay, something needs tweaking here because it's not working necessarily as we want it to?
Yeah, they've made a lot of the right noises in that respect, looking at the way that it kind of operates, and clearly the way that it's come in over this weekend and the backlash to it. I think it'll be very surprising if the government does not look again at this kind of aspect of it, the kind of age verification scheme, because for a long time it's been clear there hasn't really been a proper way of doing it, and yet the bill has still come in anyway. So I do think they will look at it again. How much they want to roll back remains to be seen, but I do think that we will see kind of changes to it, and further before the kind of final elements of the bill come in that perhaps are even more draconian on stuff come in 2027. I think we definitely will see changes to it. I think they are open to the whole reason of having this kind of long period before it all comes in is to look at the way that it works. So I do think we will see some changes.
We'll watch with interest. Certainly it's raised a lot of concern about free speech, and that's right that it would raise concern about free speech, particularly if you just suddenly nip onto Twitter on Sunday night and think, I'll just check out what this story in Leeds is. I'll have a little look, and a big banner comes up and says, no, you cannot see this. You are a disgusting Brit, and your government
all sorts
have decreed...
of things as well. Like there was something I saw something from a rape crisis centre. They have these online guides kind of dealing with sexual assault and being a sexual assault survivor and how to report stuff. But because the content has been flagged as being kind of potentially harmful, it's more difficult for people who might be like a rape survivor to look at these kind of materials online. And clearly not the way that this law was intended to be implemented.
Yeah. Let's move to this story. Donald Trump warning bad people are coming to Britain on small boats ahead of those talks, or the talks that he's having right now in Turnberry with Keir Starmer, the meeting taking place at the US President's Golf Course HQ, where they'll also discuss the conflict in Gaza. Let's have a listen to what Mr. Trump has been saying.
If you're stopping immigration and stopping the wrong people, I give my hats are off to you. You're doing not a good thing. You're doing a fantastic thing. So I know nothing about the boats. But if the boats are loaded up with bad people, and they usually are, because, other countries don't send their best.
We just signed an agreement to return them, and we've returned 35,000, in fact, out of the first year of this Labour government, of people who shouldn't be in this country. So we're very pleased that we're getting on with returning people who've got no right to be here.
Europe is a much different place than it was just 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And they've got to get their act together. If they don't, you're not going to have Europe anymore, as you know.
Well, I tell you what, Alan, regardless of where anybody sits on this channel migrant issue, Mr. Trump has been given a very different version of events from Keir Starmer in a very abridged one-line answer. Trump would have gone away going, hey, he's returning everybody, everything's sorted. They used to have a problem, they don't have a problem anymore. But there it is. I don't think you're ever going to out-Trump Trump when it comes to immigration.
No, I thought it was interesting you played the bit at the end of that kind of press conference. The first few minutes, there was a bagpiper playing that was drowning it out. And not to engage in a kind of conspiracy theory, but I think number 10 would have been quite pleased about that getting drowned out. Donald Trump has this ability to kind of create press conferences when there aren't supposed to be one. I don't think Keir Starmer wanted to have a long debate with Trump in front of the press before they'd even had the talks. And yet, Donald Trump sees a camera and can't help but have a little press conference. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes out of it. I thought it was interesting he said he didn't know anything about the boats. but yet was willing to kind of to talk about it. And so I think, yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's a very kind of delicate balancing act that Starmer's trying to play on a number of issues in their talks up at Turnberry today, and certainly kind of Europe and their kind of attitude towards illegal migration is definitely going to be one of them.
Yeah, I sense that Donald Trump isn't about to change British policy, however, and obviously Keir Starmer knows that. He's just got to grin and get through the 45-minute Q&A session that he's having right now.
Yeah, they call it a grip and grin. They call it. In
grip and grin. Yeah, and it's what we were saying earlier. I mean, the one area that, you know, whether somebody likes Trump or not, that I sort of take my hat onto him in terms of the size of his whatsits, in terms of confidence. You know, he'll say all of this in front of somebody. He doesn't care that the person, Ursula von der Leyen, yesterday when he was talking about, you know, migration in Europe, I mean, she's literally there next to him and he's going, they've got it so wrong over there. You know, what's happening in Europe is terrible. She's there next to you, mate. And to many people, that's great honesty that you don't get. I remember years ago when he told Angela Merkel on sort of live TV that they weren't stepping up to the plate when it came to NATO. That's the first time I'd ever heard a politician talk like that. I'd never seen something. Normally it's all sort of snappy, spad-written lines on press releases, and it all looks rather glossy. But there's this man who tells a very different story, and fair play.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when it comes to things like NATO funding, we're now seeing as a response, you know, Trump being so open and so kind of abrasive about kind of other NATO countries not spending enough in his eyes on defense has definitely changed attitudes and changed minds in other NATO countries. So clearly he knows that it is an effective tool in his kind of arsenal. I think obviously, you know, it's not the normal kind of ways of diplomacy, and certainly for some leaders it will probably turn people against him a little bit further, but clearly for others, he thinks it's a way of getting it out there, and he knows that his kind of superpower is being able to kind of shoot over the kind of the heads of the people that he's got in front of him and speak to that camera, speak to that audience out there on television, and that's always kind of been his way. And clearly he knows it's an effective way. You know, we're talking now about his words at the beginning of talks rather than waiting for the end when they've had those conversations. You know, he's already kind of creating headlines now before he's even gone inside.
100%. And finally, this one, the UK hopes to recognise Palestine in this parliament, according to Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary. He says recognising Palestine as a state isn't a reward for Hamas, but a step towards peace. Hugely controversial, of course. And one would say, you know, a rewiring, if you like, potentially, of our relationship with Israel.
Yeah, but I mean, to Federal John Reynolds, it was in Labour's manifesto, and it has long been Labour policy. It's not a kind of break, and it's not a change based on anything that's happened in the last couple of years. It has always been the kind of policy. Keir Starmer has been clear that he wants to do it at what he says is the right time, and the time of kind of maximum impact. You know, obviously there is this two-state solution conference going on at the United Nations this week. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, is there, and whether out of that comes kind of a resolution that at the next UN meeting in September, where Emmanuel Macron has already said that France will recognise Palestine, whether the UK decides to kind of pull the trigger and go for it at that point remains to be seen. I thought what was interesting is that Donald Trump today, those comments he just made, he basically was sort of ambivalent towards it. He didn't sort of tell Keir Starmer not to do it, but he said that he wasn't going to get involved. Yeah. And it's whether that ambivalence in public is also privately he doesn't mind, or whether in private the US are imploring the UK not to do it, and how important that's going to be. But so I think it remains to be seen how likely Starmer is to kind of follow suit with Macron. Clearly he knows he wants to do it, and he's getting a lot of pressure from inside his cabinet to do so.
It's interesting, isn't it? Remember before the election when Starmer was ahead of Sunak, you know, in terms of his loyalties to Israel. He was one step away from shouting, "Let them eat cake," and it was an extraordinary moment to see. It's like, wow, Starmer is way more aligned with Israel on what they are doing than Rishi Sunak was. It was a very sort of change of the sort of stereotypical positions of each party, but that has definitely changed since coming into power in lots of ways, whether it's, you know, trade and the weapons and dealing with that side of things, or things such as this. There's certainly a mood shift from where he was a year ago.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, it's both kind of politically, it's become more difficult to do so. But I think also as well, we've seen a year on the sort of things that have been happening in Gaza, kind of a year on. It's gone a long way from kind of prosecuting those people who took part in the October 7th tragedies, and to what we've seen in the last, you know, 6 months with the kind of levels of deprivation and starvation and attacks that are taking place in Gaza, I think it has shifted kind of everyone in the West's dial, I think, who had been very staunchly supportive of Israel. We are seeing kind of lots of countries kind of break ranks with that step. So I think, it's a case of kind of, you're right. He was clearly playing to kind of an audience back then. And obviously I think what we've seen now, the kind of joint declarations with Britain, with France and with Germany kind of show where kind of Europe is on Israeli policy at the moment.
Indeed. Alan, thank you for your time. Great to have you on with us again. Alan Tolhurst, he is, of course, chief reporter at Politics Home. Thank you to him. Over to you in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. One here says the Online Safety Act is not only censoring the intended targets, but also art. Some websites have geo-blocked the UK to avoid the fines. Creativity is dead in this country. It's a good point. David in the Cotswolds, the Online Safety Bill has basically banned anyone over the age of 35 access to news that might criticise the government, whereas anyone over 14 knows they can bypass this, even without a VPN to access anything you want. You just change your browser. Can you just change your browser? Would that work? What are you changing it to, though? Yeah, maybe the tech boys over there at Government HQ, David, are even on the browser issue. Who knows? 0344 499 1000. Back with more from you coming next on Talk.
10K cash for Coldplay.
Play 10K cash for Coldplay with 10 grand in your hand tax-free plus 6 super hot tickets to witness Coldplay's sold-out Music of the Spheres tour from a VIP box at Wembley Stadium on August 22nd.
Tickets, top tunes and 10 grand cash.
Don't panic. Enter to play 10K for Coldplay at talksport.com/win and get ready for the feel-good gig of the summer. 10K for Coldplay is a joint TalkSport Limited competition run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio. See talksport.com for terms and conditions.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Tony in Wiltshire says, with the blocking of worrying online content, would the BMA doctor protests also be blocked, as it can be upsetting knowing that people could die as a consequence of their strike? That's a good point, isn't it? I mean, if you've got anything that I don't know how they're picking this up. Anything resembles a protest? Is there an individual that's sitting there at Twitter HQ going, oh, that one looks a bit iffy? Is it picking it up somehow? Group of people get animated, talk about potential violence or death? It's a good point. It sounds crazy, but in a world of lots of craziness, entirely possible. Mark's in Glasgow on this point. What are you thinking, Mark? Hello.
I am very worried, actually, because this is something the Conservatives started off, and without any doubt, they were trying to silence a lot of criticism, and I say that as an ex-Tory voter, lifelong. But now Labour seems to have supercharged it. Your organisation is an online transmitter, so you will now, all your news reporting, etc., transmissions will be vetted, and if it's upsetting or against the government, likely stopped.
Quite possibly, yeah. That's what I was saying earlier about one of the reasons why the media, I think, had several attempts at taking this to court beforehand was for this very reason. You know, yeah, we all agree you don't want 14-year-olds watching thoroughly wicked and horrific stuff. But if you're also going to end up cancelling the news in the meantime, then you've got the policy wrong.
Yeah, well, I think so. We are, with add to this Angela Rayner's, you can't say anything that might offend somebody in a workplace or a pub or a restaurant. And you start to see that the freedom of speech is being attacked from many directions. I think we're also supposed to live in this place where everything is lovely. The current political party is to be trusted in everything they say, and anyone who criticises will be seen as far right, as they say, which is nonsense.
Absolutely right. It's a great point, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. And that is the law. The problem is this: the downside of the law at the moment, the manifestation, the downside is greater for innocent people than it is than the upside is for trying to stop horrible content getting into the wrong lap. So we all get that, and I don't think it even needs explaining. I can't believe in the AI digital world we live in, there's not another way of dealing with this. But apparently it's beyond the wit of everybody from government to social media companies. Lenny is in Ashford. What have you got for us, Lenny? Afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Well, I'd like to start and ask you just a very simple question.
Yeah.
And that is, when Starmer said he has got rid of 35,000 people...
Yes.
Has there been 35,000 court cases for people that didn't want to go?
It's a good point. I don't know where he got this figure from. I don't think he's got rid of 35,000 people who've crossed the channel, put it that way. I think they're talking about the usual. On any year, there is an X amount of people that are rejected in the UK and sent back to their country of origin. I mean, that just happens anyway. It's a bit like when the US presidents go, we're going to get rid of 300,000 illegals. And you think, well, America gets rid of 300,000 illegals every year anyway. So it's not really news.
Well, the reason I ask is just that with Starmer, everything he says, the devil is in the detail. And when you look at the detail, it doesn't really match up with what he says.
No, it doesn't really match up what he says.
No. Anyway, the reason I phoned up was free speech.
Yeah.
That tells you how strong your democracy is.
I would agree.
It gives you an idea, you know, and I truly believe that when someone is trying to stop free speech, it is someone who's got something to hide and don't want the truth told, because otherwise you can never have a debate.
I mean, look at I suppose to me, the American system, the bit that fascinates me doing this for a living, Lenny, is the kind of things you can say, for example, about court cases in America. You can say, I was watching that guy from Wyoming who's on trial for triple murder. Man alive, he's as guilty as hell. You've only got to look at the guy. You know, you can say that. And here, you can't say that. You'd end up in jail yourself. And I'm quite relaxed about the fact that I can't say that, because I think it kind of keeps a certain intelligence and a natural intelligence in our law. But even that to Americans is like, what kind of world are you living in when you can't say what you think about someone? They would find that offensive or an affront to free speech as well.
Well, the only people, I mean, I'm in my twilight years, and the experience that I have gained, gathered, that is that the people who try to stop free speech are like dictators who are frightened of the speech being of the truth being circulated.
100%. Well, they are dictators, and it's nearly always for political kind of reasoning behind it. I mean, social media, I suppose, is a game changer in so many ways. I don't even think, as a people, we've necessarily got our head fully around it, have we, Lenny?
No, well, I mean, everybody looks at every problem from a different side. And because someone is commenting on from a different side to you, that doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong. That is what they truly believe.
100%, 100%, which is why I'm a slight defender of lefty lawyers. When people say, that's a bloody lefty lawyers. No, that's great. That means we live in a democracy, right? The fact that you have people advocating or agitating sometimes the most nonsensical, ridiculous cases is oddly an example of the fact, well, we live in a free country. People can represent somebody for all manner of issues, and isn't that fantastic? That doesn't mean to say they're right, because they're usually not, but hey, let them have their moment. Lenny, I'm going to move on just for time. Great call as ever. Lenny in Ashford on free speech. Ian is down in London, picking up on Keir Starmer. What have you got for us, Ian?
Well, hi, Ian.
Hi.
Basically, what I'd like to say is, tomorrow, unfortunately, is the anniversary of Southport, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Right? Where did Starmer, what was it, 90 seconds he paid up there? Didn't bother to go and see the people that really were affected by it, and it kicked off. Here, he's got a problem in Epping. Has he even bothered to go there? No. Has Yvette Cooper gone there? No. They stay away.
Would they go to something like a protest at a hotel? I mean, I'm just asking, for a friend, as it were.
That's right. They won't. It's like Trainer Boy Lammy. He slags off Israel like crazy. If you really want to be a good big boy, David, get on a plane in these comfortable trainers, go out to Israel, go to the border at Gaza, stand there and see exactly for yourself. Why is it when it comes out, there's all the aid there, Israel want to give it, but it gets stolen?
Yeah.
Right, this is the trouble, and the thing is, they say with mainstream media that they want to do this and you've got to have VPNs and everything else, because people want the truth, but the truth is not being given to them.
They can't handle the truth.
That's right. It's like, I love one of my best films, that. I love it.
Isn't it just? Isn't it just?
But it is, but it's all the same, and he hates it. Starmer must have said to him, please, Donald, please, I'm pleading with you, don't embarrass me too much.
That you can't, you can't ask the Donald that, can you? Because he just wheels it out.
It makes you laugh that he's here and Starmer has to go up there. And why are they stopping him from speaking at the House of Parliament? They did it for Macron, they did it for all the rest, but Trump, no, can't have it.
He did do, he spoke, but did he speak in 2016 in Parliament? I think he might have done.
No, I don't think he did.
Or did he? Now you've mentioned it, maybe he didn't.
He didn't.
I don't know what the... I mean, obviously, this isn't his state visit that he's on at the moment. He's here on business, so they're just having a chin wag.
But even with the one in September...
But the official state visit. I can't remember what they gave as the official reason for not speaking. We'll check up on that, but you're absolutely bang on, Ian. I mean, why would they... Macron did it. In fact, all sorts of characters have done it over the years. Ian, thank you very much indeed for that. Point on Jonathan Reynolds and Palestine. Lorraine says, so the Labour minister who lied to his electorate for years by stating he was a solicitor when he wasn't, doesn't feel that recognising Palestine, controlled by Hamas, a terrorist group, wouldn't reward Hamas. Why on earth would we believe and trust a man who is a proven serial liar? You know what these half-wits think, and I include Macron and all those agitators going, yeah, we've got to recognise it. They honestly think it's the same... It's the same mentality. When people go, yeah, we're going to allow a criminal to come, former criminal to come and live at our house because we believe in reforming human beings and forgiveness. So we're going to have them over for a couple of days, and then they rob them blind. And you go, wow. That kind of misplaced belief that, that they'll be good if we recognise them, all this will go away. I mean, the Hamas ideology and all that goes with it. It's interesting. I was watching I don't know if you've watched the Netflix 7/7 documentary series. I think there's 4 episodes in total. And it's I mean, if you follow the story at the time, there's not a lot new, but to see it all kind of laid out and catalogued is not only interesting, but it is a fairly important reminder of what went on in our own country during that period, a whole July of carnage and fear and all that went with it. And it's only when you're reminded of the depth of the ideology of the people responsible, what they kind of believe and have been taught to believe. And that's Hamas right there, okay? That's kind of in their book. That's how they believe. And you want to recognise the country they run as an official country. What, are you going to sign them up to the UN? Maybe they'll be over there at the WEF and possibly the WHO and goodness knows who else. WWE probably. 0344 499 1000. That's where you'll find us. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Donald Trump didn't address the UK when he came here it was June 2019, largely due to opposition from the Speaker of the House of Commons. Remember, good old John Bercow, a lovely fella he was. Methinks the honourable man has had too much medicinal compound. Him used to speak in really daft, stupid riddles. So that's why he didn't address it. This time around, Donald Trump has said there is no need to recall MPs to Parliament, so he can make a speech during the up-and-coming visit saying let them have a good time instead. So Mr Trump apparently made the decision not to give a speech. Make of that whatever you will. We'll be back with your calls in a couple of moments' time. Let's move to this story. Tasers can now be used in prisons for the first time under a new government trial. I think many people will be gobsmacked. I think, what, you didn't have access to tasers anyway in a high security, very violent wing of a notorious prison. Elite officers will deploy the stun guns during riots and hostage situations to tackle violence. If the pilot is successful, tasers could be rolled out to local prison teams across the country. It follows a record number of assaults on prison staff, with officers also getting new body armour. Let's speak with Mark Fairhurst, National Chair of the Prison Officers Association. Afternoon to you, Mark. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Loud and glad you're there. Nice to have you with us as ever. I was reading just the other day, because I think you and I spoke a few months ago about stab vests and things like that, and apparently they haven't even got to the wings yet.
No, so they are personal issues. So every member of staff in the high-risk areas where they're going to be rolled out has to be measured up for them. And then, of course, they take time to manufacture.
Right.
So within the next 6 to 8 weeks, definitely every member of staff will have their own personal issue body armour. So that's a positive.
Got it. That clears that point up. What about this taser issue then? I think a lot of people might be surprised that prison officers didn't already have access to taser if needs be.
Yeah, and this union's been calling for Taser to be deployed for the last 15 years at least. And the general public would be surprised to know that not every prison has any protections at all. So, for example, the female estate, they don't carry anything, and yet violence in the female estate is at record levels, as is violence against staff at a 10-year high. So this is a welcome approach by this government. It's nice that the government are listening to the voice of the front line and, more importantly, acting upon it. But it just shows you how violent our workplace now is and how imminent the threat to life is, that we need tasers to protect ourselves.
What's happening? Do we used to have a better quality of prisoner? Is that what's changed here, Mark? Do you think? I mean, now, but what's with the anger? We know there's overcrowding issues, but I sense it's more than just that.
Yeah, so I think when you look at prisons, they're a reflection of society and our communities, and society in general is becoming more and more violent, less respectful for authority figures, and we're seeing a more violent cohort of prisoners who live their lives by violence. They're well organised in criminal gangs, and of course we're now dealing with people with an ideology that can never be changed and are determined to commit atrocities even though they're incarcerated.
Yeah. Obviously, there's a limitation to what you can do. If there is a riot situation, then it becomes, pretty challenging for officers. You all know that when you go into the job, but what you hope is that you've got the tools of the trade to at least help. So no one's expecting that every day is going to be a comfort blanket of, sipping tea and eating digestive biscuits while everybody gets on with it on C Wing. You guys already know that, but what you do need is support from the top.
We do, and we're getting that support at the moment. And what you need to realise with this particular pilot scheme is that it only applies to 2 national response teams, one in the north and one in the south. They are specially trained staff who will be able to deploy Taser at the most serious incidents. And what we're calling for at the end of this trial period is for the Secretary of State for Justice to roll it out locally. So we have local response teams, particularly in high security prisons, who can immediately deploy Taser in those exceptional circumstances where it's needed, because it's no good waiting for a national response 3 hours down the road because of traffic issues. We need it on site to immediately deploy with those select few officers who are specially trained in its deployment.
Just remind us what the time frame could look like on this then, Mark, in terms of, yes, obviously, it's all very well saying, OK, we've got a big box of tasers ready to go, but training is required on these as well. So from the point that they would be a go-to option, should something kick off in a particular prison, how far away are we from that moment?
So we have national response currently trialling it. That'll probably end round about October time. Then they'll review the evidence. And then I would imagine the Secretary of State, I know she's keen to protect staff, will further listen to us and roll it out locally. I would imagine by the end of the year we'd have staff trained, we'd have the resources in place, and we'd have a local response who'd be able to deploy Taser if they need to, and that'd be very welcome. Because when I look at the Franklin's incident, if we'd had specially trained staff locally on site to immediately deploy Taser, then maybe it just wouldn't have been as serious assault as it was.
Indeed. Mark, thank you very much indeed. Let's hope we see less of that, and that action and support that is needed for prison officers is forthcoming and quickly. Mark Fairhurst, National Chair of the Prison Officers Association. More comment coming in from you. Johnny says, Johnny's in Carlisle, Trump isn't that stupid. He knows full well what he's doing, what is going on, and he knows Starmer won't see the end of the year. Will Starmer see the end of the year? It's an interesting question. Don in Chelmsford. I'm sure I saw Keir Starmer's nose getting a little longer when he said the number of migrants have been deported, 35,000. Somebody gave him that number and said, right, be ready for a big number, because you know what Trump's like. He's already had a pop at Ursula the day before by wanging on about how inept and woeful the EU response has been to immigration, and Trump is absolutely bang on. There's no one could construct an intelligent argument to suggest he wasn't onto something when he raised that. No one, we all know it's not easy, and we all know that if you're running countries and running, states and continents, etc., it comes with a severe amount of jip, and I get it. However, we can all agree or any sane person would agree that the immigration policies that have allowed largely unfettered immigration into the EU and then potentially onto us has been woeful. The response, there's been no organisation around it. You had people like Angela Merkel a few years ago say, yeah, just come to Germany, it's fine, our doors are open, still suffering some post-war guilt or something bizarre like that. Just crazy, stupid things for politicians to say. So Trump absolutely has a point on that. And Starmer wheeling out a 35,000 figure, making it sound like that's the number of Channel migrant crossers that he sent back this year. Someone gave him the number. Despite not realising, well, there's always a number of people that, despite our strange, what often appears to be a bit of an open door policy, there are people that are deported daily in this country, and there always has been. That's not the issue. The issue of how many people are not deported daily is the area where people are concerned. Let's go to William, who's in North Ayrshire. William, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Ian. I'll try and talk a wee bit slower because my accent might be a bit thick.
Sounding good to me.
Thanks to you and your whole crew there for giving me this opportunity.
I didn't follow any of that.
Ian, it's regarding obviously, whenever a government makes a phrase as in small boat crossings or irregular crossings, which are sort of van der Leyen said, but anyway, I call them large marine vessels. That's what I call them. And what I would like to explore would be, could we not open a detention centre in Jersey? Because Jersey is it 14.5 miles away from France?
Something like that, yeah.
And they've got a perfectly good ferry service. So we could pick up the migrants as international waters in the Channel, and instead of the Border Force and the RNLI taking them to mainland Britain, take them to a detention centre in Jersey, process them there, and see that effect. I think that effect will be much, much greater than the Rwanda effect.
That would have the kind of Australian effect, right, where you never ever set foot on UK soil in that sense. You don't ever make it to the UK. To coin it, I know it's not the right phrase, but the UK mainland, you'd never get there because you would be processed in Jersey. And even if your application was seen as legit, you would, if you followed the Australian model, you would say, yep, you are legit, so we're going to send you to Rwanda. And that would be the big deterrent. And if you're not legit, you go back.
Well, to what I'm led to believe is Jersey, it's got quite a small population, and the last thing we'd want was for an invasion on...
I don't imagine Jersey would be too happy about this plan, William.
But if we've got a detention centre that is like... I'm not going to say like Donald Trump's alligator Alcatraz or whatever, but if we have got a detention centre that is well picked out, it's well thought of, and it doesn't affect the locals, especially kids that's living near schools. And instead of pumping money into hotels, give Jersey say, right, OK, we're going to really, really invest in your farms and all the rest of it. I think they would probably go, well, if they don't affect my everyday life and you're going to invest in Jersey, then I'm going to be fine with that.
But also, the other point, William, if this worked, then it wouldn't be for very long anyway, because eventually the trade would dry up, because people would think, well, what's the point of me trying to cross the Channel to get to Dover when I'm never going to make it to the UK mainland? And that's the effect that it had in Australia. It pretty much stopped. In fact, it did stop. There's no issue now.
Well, Australia had the right idea. We'll just tell you, was it Indonesia or something? But just quickly, Ian, because I know you're probably busy, but I seen a kind of a graph where people had said in opposition to Rwanda says it didn't work, but there was do you know how you get the graphs and different levels of migration and whatever? The Rwanda actually took effect. It did have an effect on the numbers crossing the Channel, I believe.
There was certainly, and I know some critics say it was just a coincidence, but you're right, there was definitely, shortly after people thought OK, this has been discussed, they've got it through the courts, this could happen. There was a drop in the numbers. Now, whether it was specifically because of that, we'll never know. But I think as the Rwanda scheme had unfolded, the flaw in the Rwanda scheme, of course, you weren't going to be sent there from the minute you landed on the beach at Dover. You were going to have to, they were going to do it the other way round. So they'd start at the back of the front of the queue. So anyone who arrived today could still be years before they were processed with the potential of going to Rwanda.
Why do you think, you're obviously a well-educated man, why do you think it takes so long?
I have no, do you know, it's a fair question. I've no idea, William. I'm pretty sure it doesn't have to take this long, right? I mean, again, the Australian system, I know we had Alexander Downer on the other day, former Foreign Minister of Australia. He was around in the Howard government when they were putting all of this into plan. And yeah, he described it in not simplistic terms, as in it was easy to put together, but in a very straightforward fashion. It seemed almost no-brainer territory. They came up with an idea, we process in another country. Nobody that comes across in a boat will ever make it to Australian soil, ever. Even if they're given the green light, they'll just be sent to a country that Australia had cut a deal with, like we did with Rwanda. And it worked. But I think the political will is the problem, right?
And
or lack of.
Human rights lawyers as well. But
Indeed.
Another thought that I've got is, if we can speed up the process for these large marine vessels that's arriving, if we can speed up the process, surely we can overwhelm the justice system, especially is it Lord Harmer and the rest of the
that's right. Yeah,
just totally bombard them, and then
they just don't. But they don't get it, William. You know, they don't. It's not in their DNA, as I keep saying, to understand the problem. It's just because to them, it's not really a problem, right?
No, personally, I think this has been planned. It's by design, and the people that we've got in control right now, they're the obstacles, and they know exactly what they're doing. It's been planned for the 1970s or whatever. I'm not wanting to get into absolute detail. They know exactly what they're doing, and they're laughing at us. They're absolutely laughing at us while they're collecting taxpayers' money as well.
Someone's having a right old giggle at the moment, aren't they? Because they're increasing channel crossings. They're stopping free speech. You can't watch videos of what's happening outside a migrant hotel. I mean, this stuff is that ordinarily would be a kind of big old Netflix drama that we'd all be tuning into every night. Go, wow, have you seen? You won't believe what's happening in this fictitious country. No, this is our country today. That's what's going on. William, I'm going to move for time, no other reason. You've been fabulous and really nice to speak and understood every word quite clearly. Thank you. William in North Ayrshire, 0344 499 1000. We've got a couple of things up and running. The migrant issue, Keir Starmer claiming 35,000 people this year have been sent back because Donald just talked big on it. And oh, well, I think you'll find, Mr. President, we've deported 35,000 people. Ha ha, isn't that brilliant? Well, if you think it's brilliant, and that is your kind of take on these things, then just do a bit more work and stop all of those people coming over on boats. Can we just do that? Can you make that happen, Prime Minister? Maybe you could. And Starmer was bang on the money. 0344 499 1000. Why do you think Keir Starmer can't really see what this story is all about? Our lines are open. This is Talk.
I'm glad he's back because, first of all, I ain't got no problem with that left-wing vote splintering. Woohoo! Bring it on. But also, I feel a lot more comfortable with soaking up the Muslim vote happening with someone like Corbyn, despite all his, glad-handing members of Hamas and being as radical as he is. I'm actually more comfortable with him than I am with the actual pro-Gaza MPs creating a Muslim-only party, and also more comfortable with him than I ever will be with George Galloway. So I'm sort of like, if it's got to exist, better the devil you know.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Michael says, I think Keir Starmer confuses his few liberal left followers with the British people. We're all happy for humanitarian relief to Gaza, but it's a big but that hostages or the remains have to be released, and it cannot be handed from the to Hamas to distribute. Or is that the UN? Anyway, I take the point, Mike. Thank you very much indeed for that. Good point. Zoe says the problem is the average person will not know where the line is drawn. All they hear is that if you say something against illegal migrants, we have a new team of officers watching this, and who may come and knock at your door and take you to prison. This is a very sinister move by the government to stop people speaking. If I'd have read that out a couple of years ago, you'd have said it was a conspiracy theory that Zoe was putting forward there. That's exactly what's happening. People go, well, am I allowed to say this? I think there's a problem at this hotel. I think there's an issue and it's wrong and it shouldn't happen. I can understand why people are angry. I can understand why people are out on the streets and why mothers and sisters and daughters are concerned about what's going on in their area. Am I going to get a knock on the door? Hello, we've come to talk about your social media posts. What, that? Seriously? Yep, come with us, son. 18 hours in the cells, and maybe longer. Before we go any further, and we will be back on the phones with Tony in just a moment. Voice of Doom, this is day 5 of... Is that right, Amy? Day 4. I'm ahead of myself. Day 4 of the Voice of Doom. We think this is the most impossible one yet. Can you remember you're looking for a political voice? Who is this?
I certainly have things to say.
It's not Ian Duncan Smith, by the way. You've got to go back a little further than that. If you think you know, 87222. 87222. Don't phone, just message. Here it is again.
I certainly have things to say.
On the off chance, and man alive, this is very remote right now, and that we get a right answer, all will be revealed after the news headlines at 3 o'clock. If not, it rolls over to day 5 tomorrow. Here it is again.
I certainly have things to say.
87222. Back with you now. Tony's in Lancashire. What have you got for us, Tony?
So I was thinking about this. Like our military is woefully undermanned at the moment. So we've got all these young fellas all wanting to come into our country. What if they had to serve in the military to get any sort of permanent residency in Britain, say 5 years or whatever? But on the flip side, would you trust these people with live weapons? And then again, if you can't trust them with live weapons, should we have them on our streets?
Well, all of those are good points, aren't they? I mean, how do we make this? I mean, you could also argue not just trusting somebody with with live weapons. Would the army want unknown, unnamed, unchecked individuals serving?
Exactly. But why do we want them then if the army don't want them?
It's a great point. If they are not somebody you would put into an army situation, doesn't mean they've got to start fighting people, but just basically, to tick all the boxes that would be required to join the army. If they can't tick those boxes, then they're the similar boxes you'd want to tick to become a member of the UK society, if you like.
Yeah, and just one other point. This thing with this super police force that's going to police the internet.
Yeah.
What if there's millions of people that are angry? What if we all took to the internet? We didn't go into hate speech, we didn't go into racism or anything like that, but you voiced your concerns and your opinions using all these buzzwords. This algorithm that they've got, that we're picking up everybody's chatter, would just go into meltdown if millions of people are all saying we're sick to the back teeth of these people on our streets. Yeah. Like I say, you don't make it hate, you don't make it racist.
But you put it to the test.
you just absolutely bury them with millions of posts, and you've got half a dozen coppers sitting there with their heads falling off.
Maybe they'll just. How would they? Yeah. How would they select who they're going to nab? I mean, they might just have a dartboard in the office and go, right, okay, anyone called Tony for a start. We'll have him for a start. Sounds like a wrong one. Heard him on the radio the other day.
Yeah.
Maybe it is that.
If it sort of kicked into that, you know, the algorithm, whatever buzzwords they're picking up, but there's nothing illegal or dangerous that you're saying. Just your frustrations.
You kind of wonder, where the heck is this thing going? Let's hope it goes no further and they retract on this nonsense idea of policing social media. Tony, I'm going to move just to get more content in. Thank you for that. A word on Donald Trump. Obviously, he's sitting in Turnberry, his golf course. Him and Starmer are having a bit of a chinwag. Trump does give very robust and very long answers. However, he also gives very frank answers. There's no doubt about that. He's not happy with the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. I think this is an incredible moment when the American president is getting animated about the London mayor. He was asked if he would visit London during his state visit in September, and this is what Mr. Trump had to say.
I'm not a fan of your mayor. Why not? I think he's done a terrible job, the mayor of London, but a nasty person. I think he's done it. I think he's a friend of mine, right? No, I think he's done a terrible job. But I would certainly visit London, yeah. Well, I like Nigel. I mean, Nigel, as you know, is a friend of mine. Nigel's done very well. He's a friend of mine.
Why did somebody ask him if he was going to visit London? It's a state visit. Of course he's going to go to London, for God's sake. That's his view on Sadiq Khan and Nigel Farage. We'll have more and hopefully an answer to the voice of doom next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed the afternoon empire. Welcome back to the home of common sense. Coming up on 3 minutes after 3 o'clock. So we are discussing Keir Starmer. Been accused of an obsession with censorship after certain police officers have been tasked with monitoring social media to control riots. This, of course, comes on the back of other campaigners warning that the Online Safety Act is harming free speech by blocking videos of many areas, including asylum seeker hotel protests. I mean, you can't put all this stuff together, which would have been laughable a couple of years ago. This is the reality of our times. This is the government of the day, 2025. Does the online safety bill harm free speech? I want your comments on that. 0344 499 1000. Elsewhere, President Donald Trump has branded wind power, yep, those big old turbines, as a con job after playing golf in Scotland, describing how turbines ruined the view from the 18th hole of his Turnberry course. We'll get more on that and another view on it too. And tourist hotspots in Spain are facing a growing backlash as Brits turn their back on Mallorca amid anti-tourism protests, while in Malaga, holidaymakers are being told to dress appropriately, respect local customs and keep the noise down after hours. That sounds fairly reasonable stuff to me. 0344 499 1000. We'll bring you all the breaking news. Of course, we've got our eye on that press conference still going on. Keir Starmer and Donald Trump are chatting away like good uns. In fact, mostly Donald Trump. He gave a right old slaughtering to Sadiq Khan a second ago. Didn't name check him, just said, I think he's a horrible man. He's not a good man. Nasty, I think he said. Done a terrible job, a nasty man. Keir Starmer chipped in and went, oh, he's my friend, which counted for nothing. So Trump just carried on and said, well, he's just done a terrible job. And he did yet again endorse Nigel Farage as a nice man and a friend of his. This from Ian, who says, online censorship. The UK needs to rethink this. I'm Canadian, now in Scotland. One of Trudeau's worst moves was banning news on Canadian social media, the worst of online censorship. Canadians cannot access, see, share any news on social media in Canada. If I share a BBC story, my Canadian friends see content not available, and it's a disaster for free speech. I don't want to see this same mess over here. So does that mean I didn't know this. So no Canadian broadcasters put anything on social media? Is that the Canadians cannot access, see or share any news on social media in Canada? Wow, what do you see on social media? I'd be intrigued to find out more. Ian, thank you very much indeed for that. Andrew says, having an additional bank holiday, this is reference to the idea that the Lionesses won a mighty victory over Spain in the Euros yesterday in the final. It was a great spectacle, high drama, a delight to watch, and what a moment for the English team. Having an additional, and some have said, well, you should have a bank holiday as a result of it. I never really bought into that. All these big things happen, so have a bank holiday. As much as I'd like one, I'm not sure they're the reasons for it. Having an additional bank holiday really only means the government has to pay out extra millions to all the public sector workers who already get more holidays than private sector workers. Apparently local council workers get 51 days holiday a year. I think they've got enough, or had enough. It's a fair point. Let's move to the voice of doom. Remember, this is the political mystery voice. This is the voice we played you just before the news. Have a listen.
I certainly have things to say.
Who is that? These are some of the answers we've had. Francis Pym, it is not. Norman Lamont, Michael Heseltine, no. Bob Marley. Hang on a sec, can we have a listen again?
I certainly have things to say.
Yeah, I can see it. Bob Marley, it is not. William Pitt, no. Ian Gilmore, no. James Pryor, Dennis Healy, no. Nor is it John Stonehouse. All no's. In fact, we haven't got a correct answer. I didn't think we would. It's a real stinker, this one. I think it's going to go on forever, although multiple clues over the weeks do tend to get us there eventually. I mean, we could just be really sneaky and say, no, we're not going to give any clues to any of this. We'll just let it run forever. It's back tomorrow at about 2:45. Now, as you've been hearing, Donald Trump has called wind power a con job after playing golf in Scotland. He said turbines spoiled the view from the 18th hole of his Turnberry course and claimed wind farms ruined the landscape, costing taxpayers expensive subsidies. Trump added he would not allow a windmill to be built in the United States. Here's a bit more of what he had to say.
And the other thing I say to Europe, we will not allow a windmill to be built in the United States. They're killing us. They're killing the beauty of our scenery, our valleys, our beautiful plains, and I'm not talking about airplanes, I'm talking about beautiful plains, beautiful areas in the United States, and you look up and you see windmills all over the place. It's a horrible thing. It's the most expensive form of energy. It's no good. They're made in China, almost all of them. When they start to rust and rot in 8 years, you can't really turn them off. You can't bury them. They won't let you bury the propellers, you know, the props, because there's a certain type of fiber that doesn't go well with the land. That's what they say. The environmentalists say you can't bury them because the fiber doesn't go well with the land. In other words, if you bury it, it will harm our soil. The whole thing is a con job.
The whole thing is a con job. I mean, he's wrong, by the way, on term. He said, I wouldn't allow a windmill to be put in the United States. There's loads of windmills in the United States. Forget what you think of them. But that's not true. And I read a story at the weekend in Texas, of all places, where there is, and this was a Trump-supporting farmer who's diversified into wind power and producing enough to energize, I can't remember how many, 1.3 million homes or something of that nature. Let's speak to Robert Palmer, Deputy Director of Uplift. Uplift supports efforts to create a rapid and fair transition away from mucky oil and gas production in the UK. Robert, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. I didn't imagine this. I think I'm right. There's probably tens of thousands of windmills or turbines, whatever you want to call them, in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, Ian, like Texas is both the oil and gas capital of the US, but it's also the wind capital. And that's because wind is cheap and reliable and creates secure energy. You know, the truth is at the moment in the UK, our energy bills are so high because we are dependent on imported gas. And so that means where, you know, someone like Putin decides to invade Ukraine, our bills skyrocket. And so the answer is to make sure that we can have clean, safe energy built here in the UK, which would bring down bills, be better for the planet, and make sure that our energy is more secure. And I think, you know, Donald Trump probably cares more about his views from his golf course than he does about the UK's energy mix.
But you haven't thought this through, Robert, and I can tell you why, because I've been listening to Trump's words, and here's the problem. They pollute the soil, they kill wildlife, they ruin your view, they're more expensive, and life gets more miserable with windmills. There you go. Yeah, not my words, Donald J. Trump. Your argument is scuppered, Robert Palmer. You've got nothing now, nothing to give. Come on.
Well, I mean, there we go. Do I detect a note of sarcasm in your voice, Ian?
I mean, can you take us through those points that he said, though? Because he doubled down on it as well. He kept saying that they ruined the view. I mean, that's a judgment call, I suppose. However, he was certainly absolutely set on this idea that you can't, after 7 or 8 years, you can't take one down and you can't bury the blades because it will essentially poison the soil, was what he was saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think probably everyone can see that burning more oil and gas is going to be more damaging for our environment and our climate than relying on renewables. You know, the oceans have suffered more from oil spills than they have from the occasional wind turbine. So, like, I just think on the facts, Donald Trump is just not right in terms of when it comes to wind. And really, the truth is the future is in renewables. And that's why places like China are investing so much money in renewable energy. Clean, renewable power made here in the UK, which is a real UK success story. You know, we should be proud of our role in the creation of the renewable industry, is the way in which we bring down bills and guarantee jobs. Now, something that he also mentioned was that the UK should just, you know, pump more oil and gas, you know, drill, baby, drill. But the truth is we've basically burnt all of the gas that we have in the North Sea. And that's why jobs in places like Aberdeen, which depend on the oil and gas industry at the moment, are really dropping. And so what we need is like a proper plan and investment to get us to clean energy, which would bring us the jobs, bring us good, cheap energy, and is the future. You know, that's the way that other countries are going.
Isn't the issue around cost? Because this curious way that the price is set, whatever the highest gas price of the day happens to be, and that's the price we pay, which seems always, look, I'm an outsider on this one, I can't comment professionally, but it always seemed a little skew-if to me. Can't the government control that?
Yeah, and there are lots of different ways in which we could reform our energy system, but you're right that fundamentally, most of the time, our energy bills are set by the most expensive energy, which is imported gas. And so this is really about economics, it's about geology. The North Sea is in terminal decline. What we need is sort of safe, clean energy produced here in the UK, which will bring the jobs and cheaper bills, and is also more secure, more secure to be creating our own energy here in the UK rather than importing it from elsewhere.
Where do you imagine then Donald Trump's dream of a windmill-less society will go? He said that there's other countries, he didn't name them, that are also sharing his cynicism, skepticism around windmill or wind technology.
Well, I mean, I don't know what people tell Donald Trump behind closed doors, but if you can look at what places are actually doing in terms of building out renewables, Texas is a really good example. They're building it because it's cheap and it's reliable, and that's the reason to be investing in renewables. And you can see that in China, and you can see it in the UK. And this is the future. This is the way that we get good jobs in the UK. It's the way that we get cheap energy. Pumping more oil and gas is just not going to work. The oil all just gets sold on the international market. And by the way, there's this big oil field owned by the Norwegian public called Rosebank. It will be the Norwegian public that make all the profit off that, and it won't touch the sides with our bills. So I think it feels pretty clear, this is ultimately about geology and economics rather than where you sit on kind of climate science.
Yeah, listen, we'll watch with interest how this one develops and what Mr. Trump says next. Robert, thank you for your time. Robert Palmer, Deputy Director of Uplift, which is an organisation that supports efforts to create a very swift transition from oil and gas in the UK to the windmills. So the thing I think we can, the area of debate, visually, some people quite like windmills and some people hate them. Looking at, I don't think a power station is that attractive either, for that matter. That's the least of the problems, what they look like. If you have a few of them dotted across a hill in the middle of nowhere, then I don't think that's going to upset too many people. If you have them all over the place, then naturally, if you have too many thousands of acres of solar panels, you can see why some people would go, well, actually, that's, it's not aesthetically that pleasing, is it? It used to be a nice cornfield of golden corn and the wheat and the like, lavender, goodness knows what else, all growing beautifully in its natural organic state. And then now we've got loads of glass reflecting sun in some weird Frankensteinian environmental experiment that may or may not work. So there is a visual thing on that, but that's a judgment call. That's not really the essence of what he's saying. What Trump is saying, it's a con job. They don't work, essentially, and they're too expensive. Now, I happened to read an article yesterday. You ever have that when you read an article in a newspaper and you think, oh, I'll mention that tomorrow. And I didn't save the article. Now I can't find it for love nor money. But it was a farmer in Texas. So Texas is about, Dallas, from Dallas, the soap opera, to God knows what else. This is oil-rich territory. This is, you cut a Texan in half, they bleed oil. But the amount of wind production that is happening in Texas, from what I was reading in this piece, is far more than anyone. They're going for it down there. They're going, do you know what? There's money to be made here, and this is working, and we are energising homes, not through oil, but through wind. So what do you make of that? Where does that sit with Donald Trump's comments? At the moment, it's not less expensive, not for us over here, because our energy bills are through the roof. They're off the scale. They're laughable. Well, they would be laughable if it wasn't so damaging for individuals, households, trying to make ends meet. Let's go to your calls. Hazel is in Hampshire on this issue of Trump. What have you got for us, Hazel? Afternoon to you.
Hello.
Hello.
He doesn't think these windmills are very pretty, and I agree with him.
Yeah.
But I think trees are lovely. But he is allowing millions of trees to be deforested from his country to supply our Drax power station, and he should put a stop to that. But because he likes things beautiful, but I want to know, what is the difference between burning new wood and burning prehistoric wood, i.e. coal?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
What do you make of the idea that you know, this is whether we like it or not, wind production is the future, and Donald Trump is just playing to a bit of an old gallery on this.
No, I think he's onto something. I don't think, you know, when you consider how much oil America has, I mean, if we and Americans stopped using oil, all the other countries wouldn't stop. Other countries would still carry on doing it, wouldn't they? They think we're idiots, I think. I think we are too.
Maybe we are.
Fight our faces.
There it is. Great. Hazel, thank you very much indeed for that. Rufus says, gas is at its cheapest for 4 years. Why is the UK paying the highest energy costs in the world? Where is Rolls-Royce's small nuclear hydro schemes, this obsession with wind farms? Yeah, there are other ways of doing it, and to many people the nuclear option would have been the most straightforward. They do take a long time. I'm not talking about the big, you know, sort of Sizewell C elements of this. The smaller, for want of a better phrase, not the correct term, but the smaller hubs that you can build far quicker. If only somebody had thought of this in like 2010, we wouldn't be in this mess now. So it's interesting about gas being at its cheapest, but our bills being at the highest. Karen says, so the very first things out of the energy guy's mouth are complete lies. He didn't answer one straight question. Renewables, a misnomer totally, are made with fossil fuels. They are toxic. They destroy far more land and oceans than oil and gas. They don't work. Well, they do require... I think Karen's referring to the entire journey. From construction to travel. They come from China, what they're made of, getting rid of them, how long they last, etc. I'm pretty sure that if you crunch the numbers on that, these things will not look anywhere near as attractive as they do to some environmentalists. Do they work? Well, when they're in situ and the wind is blowing, yeah, they work brilliantly and it's fantastic. It's just not fully reliable, which is why they say, wow, you need the solar panels as well. Look, I'm all for, if you can make all of our houses light up so I can use my gas, my electricity, cook my munch, plug my lawnmower in. If I can do all of that stuff on renewables, then I'm in. I think everybody would be, right? That sounds like a better thing. Yeah, we haven't got to have the old gas guzzling stuff. But it ain't as simple as that, because they've got to be designed and transported. They've got to be moved from place to place. They've got to be somehow recycled. They don't last forever. That's got a carbon footprint to it. They've got to have a certain amount of electricity to function, obviously, and that doesn't come without some assistance from the fossil fuels. Now, if you put all of that together, like for like, I'm sure it uses less. I don't know. Does it use less? Does it use more? Is it the same? Is it neutral? Your response on all of that, please. 0344 499 1000.
The British government just hasn't got a handle on the situation. You know, when we left office, we were weeks away from the Rwanda scheme coming into effect. That was, you know, many people would say far from perfect, but it was going to be a deterrent. It would have acted as a way of putting people off coming into this country. And one of the first things that this government did when they came in was scrap the Rwanda scheme, scrap that deterrent, and replace it with absolutely nothing. It's the mantra of, you know, stopping the boats, smashing the gangs is all well and good, but when it comes to it, they've shown very little appetite for actually doing that.
I'm glad.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 23 minutes after 3 o'clock. Now, the England women's football team are heading home. Well, they're home already, but they're heading to Downing Street. The Lionesses beat Spain, of course, on penalties, and a reception at Downing Street is on the way. Let's speak to Talk's reporter Alex Dibble, who is there, ready and waiting. Alex, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
And there you are. Look, listen, you're the backdrop, you've stood outside that famous door many, many times. You don't often see it looking like that.
Absolutely not, no. So there are Union Jack, St George's Cross. Oh, got it wrong already. There's St George's Cross draped all over the windows at number 10 just behind me. There are also England flags on the railings as well. So number 10 making sure that nobody's in any doubt what this afternoon is all about. We're going to have the Lionesses here at about 5 p.m. They're going to make their way from the airport along the motorway. Hopefully they don't get stuck at the Dartford Tunnel or something like that. So they've got to make it all the way here. But even if they do, I doubt many of them will care. The party bus is clearly the place to be at the moment, and they're going to be welcomed by Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, with Keir Starmer, of course, in Scotland, with Donald Trump. Angela Rayner will be hosting the party. The Sports Minister is going to be here, and her big message, Stephanie Peacock, is, you know, this is about creating that lasting change. We want to build on what happened last night. A similar message to what we heard 3 years ago after that victory at Wembley, but this is a chance to celebrate with the team, of course, ahead of the big bus parade tomorrow.
Yeah, I do wonder, you know, this is a largely separate point, and as an impartial journalist, Alex, I wouldn't expect you to be too animated on this point, but, you know, you might have thought you'd get to meet the Prime Minister when you won rather than Angela Rayner. But, of course, she does like a party, so maybe there is some compensation in that after all.
Well, she's no stranger to some festivities, is she?
Indeed, yeah, and so maybe she's after all the right person.
Quite right. I mean, we know that the celebrations in Switzerland at the England team hotel were going on way past 4 a.m. last night. Ella Toon's husband turned citizen journalist last night. Lots of social media videos and photos coming out from him. Ella Toon herself giving karaoke a good go. River Deep, Mountain High, I think was her big song last night. And also, what was it? We had Leah Williamson, the England captain, and Serena Wiegman cutting a wedding cake that was kind of decorated in footballs and things like that as well. And just families of the players as well as the players themselves drinking and partying and dancing long into the night. And now, of course, they've got straight on a plane. They're coming here, and you know, if the Deputy Prime Minister was watching the game last night and happened to celebrate with a glass of wine and was up into the early hours, it wouldn't be a colossal shock. No. So maybe they're the perfect match this afternoon.
Absolutely. So this is not going to be a case of a big open-top bus pitching up the Downing Street gates into number 10, right? I mean, they are coming, you know, in what you might call normal transportation form.
I haven't had confirmation, but I understand the coach itself will not be parked outside number 10. I think they'll be walking up. You know, when you see cabinet ministers walk up to number 10,
you've got to do the walk up.
About to get sacked or something like that. They'll do the walk up, except they're not getting sacked. They're going to be welcomed very warmly, of course. And yes, and of course the crowds outside Downing Street, some of whom just came for a little, trying to sneak a snap of number 10 through the gates, as they often do, happen to be here on the day the Lionesses are turning up, so they're all getting excited as well. well. And then the bus parade, that's going to be tomorrow, you know, outside Buckingham Palace. This is very much the sort of the first opportunity for Downing Street and Number 10 to thank the Lionesses.
Indeed. So just remind us then, Alex, they are, you know, en route, but what's the supposed time of arrival? When is this meant to happen? When does Angela Rayner stand there ready and waiting for the England team on the steps of Number 10?
Well, we understand that's going to be about 5 p.m. Provided traffic isn't an issue on the way from the airport, we think it's going to be about 5 p.m. And then we're going to have Angela Rayner. We have FA representatives here as well, we're told, as well as the players, as well as the coaches, as well as the Deputy Prime Minister and the Sports Minister. So it should be a really good occasion. I can tell you as well that Larry, the Downing Street cat, has been lounged across the steps all afternoon. He's got no idea, Ian, no idea what's about to descend on him, the party that is about to descend.
No one sprayed a St George's flag on its back or anything like that, so it's just the cat is chilling, ready for the big event. Listen, Alex, thank you. Enjoy it, because it's a lovely moment as a journalist to be there, I think, when something like this is happening. Alex Dibble, our reporter there in Downing Street. They'll arrive within around about an hour and a half, all being dependent, of course, on the usual traffic. James says this is reference, if you like, online. What's the word I'm looking for? The name has escaped me. Online sanctions, discrimination against what you might have to say online. Not the word I was looking for. You take the point. James says they've shut down my Facebook page, which I've had since 2006. I was given no reason apart from your account does not meet community standards on integrity. But we know why, because I post anti-immigrant stuff. What's interesting about that? Yeah, that's exactly why it would be. There is no... And look, I get it. Facebook's a private company. They can allow who the heck they want to be part of it or not part of it. However, that kind of doesn't work, really. There's lots of people who run businesses through social media, so they can't really get away with that any longer. And the difficulty you will have, and James may have experienced this or not, but you try to get in touch with somebody, you're not going to get through to a call centre where Miriam is going to go, yeah, I'm really sorry about that, James, don't worry, we'll connect you back up by 6 o'clock. You won't get an answer. This is Helen in Leicestershire. What have you got for us, Helen? Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Ian.
Hiya.
Love the show, as always.
Thank you.
Reference to the article which you found and lost.
Yes.
It's I have it in front of me. It's from yesterday's Sunday Telegraph.
Ah, was it the Telegraph? Do you know, strangely enough, I assumed it was the Times for some reason, but it was the Telegraph.
No, it's the Sunday Telegraph, and its headline is How Oil-Rich Texas Became America's Net Zero Capital.
That's
and it's a double-page spread discussing... to be fair, I haven't read it, but I can't always get through the whole Sunday paper.
No, that's fair enough. There's quite a lot of it going on. Yeah, I've got one here. Why Texas' cutthroat approach to net zero is paying off as well. Is that the same? Maybe the thing is they do differ it between whether you reading something on a phone or whether you're looking at it online. Ben Helmers, is that the name of the guy that's the centre of the story?
Yeah, Bobby Helmers.
Bobby Helmers, sorry, yeah. Used to be an oil man. For years he worked leasing land for petroleum companies. But those wells have long been plugged up, it says here.
Yeah, it's a very detailed article with all sorts of graphs and things on, axes that we've got to read and absorb, and it looks very complicated. But that's the... Anyway, I just thought I'd let you know.
No, that's very kind. And it's interesting. Listen, I'm really grateful, Helen, for that, because there's nothing more infuriating than knowing you've read something somewhere and then you can't find it again. Great call. Thank you. Really appreciate that. That's Helen in Leicestershire. It's odd, isn't it? Because you go to Google or whatever search engine and you lob in all the key words of what you read. Texas, oil power, wind power. But the Lone Star State is America's green powerhouse. And they are producing kind of twice as much in terms of wind in particular and solar than its nearest rival, which is California. Twice as much. I mean, it's just incredible. And I don't know, when Donald Trump said I wouldn't allow windmills to be built in the United States, I don't know what he's talking about, because former oil man Bobby Helmers, who's 84, says his wind turbines are a blessing. And he's a Trump supporter, by the way, this guy. He's not come at this as some kind of, he's environmental lefty. He's come at this because he's realised there's more money in it than there is currently in the oil market. He said, it's not that I was dissatisfied with the oil, it's just that production was depleting. They became no longer economically feasible. And now the Trump voter has 6 wind turbines spinning in his ranch. There you go. Thank you to Helen for pointing us back in the right direction. More coming from you in just a couple of moments. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
5 to 4, Jeremy Kyle. Is Jezza at 4, isn't it? Jeremy Kyle at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Am I right in saying? It is. Jezza is back in the hot seat on Drive. We'll chat to him beforehand, find out exactly what is going on. Now, tourist hotspots in Spain are facing a backlash as Brits turn their back on Mallorca amid anti-tourism protests that officials say are scaring visitors away. Locals claim some resorts are completely dead this summer, with the island's tourism industry in panic. Meanwhile, Malaga has launched a 10-point plan urging holidaymakers to dress appropriately, respect local customs and keep the noise down after hours. Let's speak to Lisa Minot, travel editor at The Sun, of course, currently in the south of France. Afternoon to you, Lisa.
Hello there, afternoon.
Not jealous at all what I'm looking there. You're by a beach. It looks like it's about 30 degrees. How's it doing?
It's very hot, yes. It's windy, so I apologise if there's a bit of sound issues, but It's gorgeous down here.
All sounding lovely. But what the heck is going on in Spain?
Well, it is unfortunately what we have been predicting for about the last 2 years when we first saw these protests start, not just in Mallorca, but in mainland Spain as well, and in the Canaries. It's a little bit of, be careful what you wish for, because unlike the past, the great sort of start of the package holiday where we were all going off to Benidorm and to the Costa del Sol, there are so many more places across Europe and beyond that we can visit as tourists this summer. And as what's predicted is going to happen has happened, that people have said, you know what, we'd rather go somewhere where we're going to be welcome.
Well, that would be the point, wouldn't it? And when you've got locals who have, for years, and it's been building up, as you know, Lisa, you reported on this before, a sort of sense that they're as mad as hell and they're not going to take it anymore, as it were. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because no one wants their town completely inundated to the point they don't have it to themselves and it's not recognisable. But simultaneously, very large hotspots in Spain survive almost solely because of tourism, exclusively even.
And that's the real issue we've got here. Yes, there is over-tourism, and we've seen the likes of Venice tackle that with a charge now to go into Venice itself, onto the island itself of Venice. So we have seen that happening, and that is definitely something that does need to be tackled. But I think actually British people as a whole are quite welcoming about doing that. We're, part of our sort of dinner party or pub conversation is being able to turn around to your friends and say, I've discovered this amazing place here, or I've just been here and nobody else has been there before. So there's really a double-edged sword. You've got this quite negative perspective coming from these locals who quite rightly are upset not with tourists in general, but with the fact that they're really struggling to find somewhere to live on the islands, mainly down to the huge boom in the sort of short-term let, the Airbnb style accommodation. So you've got that on one hand. And then on the other hand, you've got the fact that, we're not as Brits, really happy to go somewhere where we don't feel we're welcome. And there's been so public, these protests, and they have been targeting Brits. We've seen in Barcelona where they've got the water guns out and they've been spraying people sitting, having a meal. And as you say, for the likes of Mallorca, their entire GDP is based on tourism. Yeah. So, you can't really just take that away without giving something else to the locals, because unfortunately, what are they going to do next?
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? What are they going to do next? You'd have thought somebody at the local authority, the council, might have had a word with whoever's behind these protests and said, look, you've got to be careful what you wish for here, because we could be scuppered royally very soon.
And that's exactly what we've seen. So we've seen the likes of tour guides and the likes of restaurants saying that, their trade is down massively this year. Now, that could be a little bit to do with the fact we have got a cost of living crisis. People are having to make choices. But then also, Spain isn't now the cheapest place to go on holiday. So we've seen a huge resurgence in the likes of North African resorts, of Morocco, Tunisia, where they're offering really good quality accommodation for cheaper prices than you'll get in Spain.
And speaking of Spain, Malaga launching a 10-point plan urging holidaymakers to dress appropriately, respect local customs and keep the noise down. Now, I was a bit surprised about this, Lisa. I know that territory quite well. I lived out there when I was a bit younger, as you know well too. You turn up at the airport. If you turn left, you go to Malaga, as in the city. If you turn right, you go to Puerto Banús and all those lovely places down there. I would have thought the turning right issue might be where they want to talk about people dressing appropriately. Malaga, it's not the usual place for the kind of boozy Brits, is it? It's, mostly a fairly respectable, nicely historic place where I would say is a bit more of a sober affair than certainly Marbella.
Well, I think what we're talking about here is the municipality of Malaga. So that's Malaga and all of those coastal resorts that you see along the coastline there. And of course, those are going to be welcoming not just, many, many Brits, but tourists of all nationalities. And this is really, I think, something that isn't targeted particularly just at Brits, but tourism in general. And the fact that, come on, let's have some civility here. Let's make sure that we are respecting the locals, respecting their lives and their livelihoods, and the area around us. And that's no bad thing. I don't think anybody would argue that, do we really want people wandering through shopping centres or into bars and restaurants without their tops on? It's, that's not great for anybody, is it? So I think nobody's going to have an issue with these rules unless they're out there trying to make trouble, because they're pretty much common sense. Don't make huge amounts of noise after dark. Again, that comes down to that accommodation that people are choosing to be in. So if you're in a block of flats and you're in an Airbnb, you perhaps are living with people who are locals who live in that area. It's not the same as being in a hotel where, yes, if they want to put the music on by the pool or the disco, people would expect that, and then it's contained. It's about making sure that people are respecting the locals and their environment outside of those big resorts.
Indeed, and that's a fair point, isn't it? Listen, Lisa, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the time there. I know you're not holidaying, you are working. Lisa Minnow, travel editor at The Sun, currently in the south of France. Brits, not just Brits, but, we know that Brits like a kind of a trip to the sun. If you get a group together, you can get a bit of rowdiness with no intent on being deliberately harmful. But the manifestation isn't always pretty. You don't want matey, you know, dropping his trousers, doing a moonie, you know, because it's like a bit hilarious with his pals, swearing at the top of his voice because he's absolutely K-lied on the Sylvester. That's just not a good look. But, you know, Brits do it over here. When we had that good weather the other week, I mean, I've forgotten how many. It's a bit weird, isn't it? A bloke walking in his shorts with just flip-flops and no top, walking around the town. Am I alone in finding that a little bit odd? I know it happens in supermarkets, doesn't it? And the supermarkets try to say, you know, there's food around here, you know, your dripping armpits of sweat over our avocados is not something we particularly welcome. So try and stick a T-shirt on before you come shopping. But there's just a contingent of bloke that doesn't get that will just... And we're not talking about guys that look, you know, a tad chiselled and a little bit tasty on the eye when it comes to the body. I mean, we're talking about often the very antitheses of that, you know, take the top off. And also driving in your car without a shirt. Have you never heard of seatbelt nipple? It's a very, very dangerous thing that can happen. You know, joggers can get it. You don't want to be rubbing your seatbelt on your little nippage, do you? I mean, that's just not a... That's horrible. Stick a shirt on, man. What's wrong with you? Yeah, and stop parking and reversing your car using one palm. What is that all about? Weirdos. Let's go to David in Fife. David, how you doing?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, good.
Yeah, I can hear some nice music. Have you just got Spotify?
Yeah, hang on. There we go. Right, cool.
I'll tell you what, we'll come back to you, David. A little bit of a bad line as well. Let's go to Matt in Cheshire, who hasn't got any music, mostly because he's miserable. Matt, how you doing?
Absolutely fine, thank you. That sounded like Christopher Cross, actually.
Do you think it was? The theme from Arthur?
Sailing boat. No, it was...
Oh, sailing, was it?
Yeah, one of my all-time favourites for chilling out to.
There you go. He's probably listening to Smooth or something, which is terrible state of affairs. Anyway, what have you got for us, Matt?
It's the only way to stay sane in modern Britain, and it is yacht rock, I think.
I think you might be right.
I was told by your call screen I'm allowed to mention YouTubers, but I've been watching some YouTubers who go to migrant hotels for about 2 years, and I implore all your viewers, listeners, to go and watch a guy called DJ E-Media. He goes to the migrant hotels and he stands at the front door, he goes to the gate.
Yeah,
and
tries to get in, have a walk around.
Yeah, he's very good. He's very sort of civilised with them and tries to be decent until they all start inevitably turning nasty and aggressive. There's also Charlie Veach. He does Manchester City Centre, Piccadilly Gardens, and basically documenting the type of disgusting low-life men that we're letting into Britain. And there's a whole thing out there now where people are learning that we've been conned and everything we've been told is total drivel. We're basically letting absolute horror shows into Britain. Yeah. They're all sat around on the streets drinking, layering at women. Obviously, in amongst that, there are a few decent people as well. But the majority of them are just laughing at us, and the people who own the hotels are laughing at us.
Well, the people that own the hotels are definitely having a laugh, aren't they?
Without a doubt. Yeah. These people are going to be affected by this online law. If it, you know, obviously you're going to be far right as well now at Talk, along with me and everyone else that do Talk. Will it just defies belief that they've got the cheek to think that they can do this, and again, it'll just embolden everyone on the right. These YouTubers, what they'll do now, they'll team up even more into big teams, and there'll be like 10 of them all together at one hotel. So
it's fascinating. What do we learn from those videos that we didn't already know? Because I, like you, Matt, I found myself watching them, and I think, you know, fair play. I've never seen the BBC try and get a camera in one of those places, so good on you for trying to bring it to us. Journalistically, what are they trying to show, do you think?
Well, there's the auditors, isn't there? They're all called auditors under one umbrella.
Auditors is a kind of wider thing, isn't it, online of stuff you do, and it's laden with mischief, but very funny to watch.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them are just police-based, aren't they? Some of them, but a lot of them have done the migrant hotels on and off. But DJ Media is the one. Ironically, he also does beautiful National Trust parks with great drone videos and everything as well.
That's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
We have learned that they just sat around smoking weed, they're getting free trainers, they're on the phone to a cousin in wherever, and everybody who goes near the door is met by always Indian security guards. And they're like little embassies where British people aren't allowed, and it's just like one woman inside who's white.
It is very, very weird, isn't it? And when it doesn't matter. As I always say, I have no truck in understanding, and most journalists that have gone over to Calais and try to speak to these people, these are individuals, most of them, that actually want to get a job in the UK and actually start a life. Now, that's fine. Doesn't matter what their reason is, whether they're an offender, a decent person, they could be a worshipping, God-given Christian. Doesn't matter. They're not meant to be here, right? That's the point. And we're paying, 7-8 million a day now.
We're paying them to sit around drinking in Manchester Town Centre, to sit around drinking in the ground.
But I don't know how many. Yeah, I mean, I would resist that a little bit, Matt, on the basis that I don't imagine most of them would do that. I mean, but I don't care if none of them are doing it. The point is, it still doesn't change the fact they shouldn't be there. What I think journalistically, what we've got to avoid if we want to win the argument is by saying, these are all dope-smoking drunks and they're after our kids. And of course, the difficulty with that is there will be a percentage of people with ill intent. But we've got to be careful how we sell that point, which is why I don't know if you remember last week we did a phone-in. What's the most persuasive argument to get people to understand the problem? Is it the economic argument or is it the criminal argument?
You're right, Ian. I mean, I appreciate you always for being fair-minded and giving balance. And I agree that probably some of them are genuinely genuine, but what we mainly see in these videos, and obviously auditors are trying to provoke a reaction as well, sometimes they just stand back and film them and they're giving them the finger. I implore you to watch recent Charlie Veitch videos in Manchester City Centre.
Oh, I've seen a lot of them. I've seen, it's like when he's not getting smacked by somebody. There's a lot going on. Listen, Matt, I've got to move because we've overshot on time. Some good recommendations, though, from Matt, and you will find all sorts on that. You have to, like all of these things, you've got to view them through the prism of and the context in which they are filmed and made and their purpose and all the rest of it. But I do commend people who try to do stuff that other areas of the media simply don't touch, and I'm happy to highlight that point from Matt in Cheshire. 0344 499 1000.
British government just hasn't got a handle on the situation. When we left office, we were weeks away from the Rwanda scheme coming into effect. That was, many people would say far from perfect, but it was going to be a deterrent. It would have acted as a way of putting people off coming into this country, and one of the first things that this government did when they came in was scrap the Rwanda scheme, scrap that deterrent, and replace it with absolutely nothing. It's the mantra of, stopping the boats, smashing the gangs is all well and good, but when it comes to it, they've shown very little appetite for actually doing that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So the Lionesses have arrived back home after winning, of course, Euro 2025. Touchdown in Southend Airport 10 or 15 minutes ago. There'll be what looks like a big old crowd has turned out to say hello. Whether they're doing any kind of walkabout there, I don't know, but they're certainly on their way to Downing Street for a bit of a tete-a-tete with Angela Rayner. Wow, imagine all that celebration, and at the end of it, you get to meet Angela Rayner. Reference Brits' behaviour abroad. Rob Willows, living in Spain, says, regarding British tourists, my wife works at Malaga Airport and Brits turn up in pyjamas, stinking of booze and unshowered. She sees a lot of nationalities, but no other nationalities dress or act like Brits do. She's worked with tourists all her life and has never seen people like this. It's disgraceful. Isn't that awful? But you can imagine it, just turning up, rolling out of bed, getting a taxi to the airport in pyjamas. You also have to ask who takes pyjamas to Malaga, by the way. It's nearly always hot out there, but you take the point. I can see it, Rob. Thank you very much indeed for that. David is in Fife on the issue of wind power. What have you got for us, David? Hi.
Hi, Ian. I was just listening to the chat that you had on earlier on about wind power and renewables, which are obviously very unreliable. I've got a bit of a bone to pick with you. I mean, you're obviously an eminent journalist. Obviously very good. You talk about energy all the time.
Yeah.
I think you give a lot of these guys a free pass.
I don't know enough about it, to be honest.
You talk about it a lot, but look, anyway.
Yeah, I don't have the information. I mean, I gave him the lines that Trump came out with and allowed him to respond to them. But I'm not a geologist, an environmentalist, and lots of people pretend they are, and it's very easy just to pretend you're a bit angry about something without knowing what it really means. I know that it's evangelical, and I know that the world isn't about to end, but it would be remiss of me. The beauty of a show like this is someone like you, David, can call up and you can counter his arguments.
Right, OK. Well, the renewables, OK?
Yes.
My background's electrical. Renewables, they basically work at about a third of installed capacity, so they work at a third of the time. So they're actually very unreliable. So you can imagine if you've got a day with all your renewables running and they're powering the whole country and it's fantastic, you've still in the background got your conventional steam and water-driven turbines running because you can't just turn them off, and therefore you're paying for two power supplies, right? So you've got one power supply, the renewables, unreliables, parasitical on your conventional steam and water-driven turbines, and that's why electricity is so expensive, and that's why these things have got to be subsidised.
So you're saying they're expensive because they're doing two things?
I'm saying they're expensive because you only need one of them, but we're paying for two. We only need the conventional steam and water-driven power supplies.
Yeah.
Because renewables only work at a third of installed capacity, a third of the time, they need to have that backup permanently running.
Where does the figure of a third of the time come from? Because that also intrigues me as well. And again, if I knew the absolute answer, I hear people say that we're getting 75, 80% of our energy now from renewables on a regular basis. Is that false?
That's false. Basically, you could, as I said, you could have a day when you're running 100% of renewables, but your conventional energy still runs in you could have 5,000.
Yeah, you don't turn everything off because it's a windy day, right?
Exactly. You've got to keep. You can't turn power stations on and off. You can't just switch electricity on and off. It's just not an easy thing.
I get it. David, listen, I've got to step in because we've literally hit the clock. We could talk for a lot longer. Always happy to get some comments in. That is the beauty, Jeremy Kyle, of a show.
What hands you have.
What hands he has. What the beauty of a show like this is that if I don't know the answer to something...
I don't know the answers to anything.
Well, me too. But that's because we have brilliant callers.
Hashtag me too. Brilliant.
Who can call in.
Donald Trump, don't I love him?
Do you know what?
Honestly, sort out immigration
so
or you
boxes.
lose. Wind farms are a load of absolute crap, okay? Sadiq Khan is a nasty, horrible little man. And the farmers thing's quite important. He abolished the tax in America because it was killing farmers quite literally. I mean, it can't have been a particularly nice time for Starmer, can it?
Must. I mean, no one else does this on the political spectrum. Like the day before, he sat next to Ursula von der Leyen talking about how the EU's policy on immigration is absolute disastrous.
Yeah, doesn't give a damn.
When you first see it, you think he's sitting in a room on his own, and then the camera pulls out. She's next to him.
Yeah.
He doesn't care.
But that's what, you know, and I repeat what I always try and say, there's a lot about the Orange Man baby that I wouldn't agree with, but I just wish we had somebody with the cojones of that man to just go, do you know what, I don't care who I upset, we've got a problem with migration, we're treating farmers disgracefully and pensioners disgracefully and ex-servicemen and women disgracefully, and Sadiq Khan's a complete liability. He's just responded to Trump. Have you heard what he said?
Has he? No, what did he say?
I don't know why I'm doing that voice.
He didn't say diversity is our strength, did he?
Absolutely.
Seriously?
Yes, check it out, it's just said it. Wasn't it diversity is our strength or so? Yeah.
I mean, why would he even need to say that?